Ta-da-da, and I'm here finally. I don't have anyone lined up, so I do apologize if there was supposed to be someone coming in. I do have some conversations I'll be making with some people in, I'd say this week, some new Kickstarter projects I'm checking out, and that's been pretty cool. Reading up on, getting back into that, and finding out what kind of amateur titles are coming out next year. Other Kickstarter projects I'm looking at are Bloodstained, which is, I think, coming out this or next month. And there was another Castlevania game, or Castlevania Metroidvania style game from the same studio, from Iga or Igarashi. So that's kind of cool. I'm waiting on that. But in the meantime, I have been playing the hell out of Pillars of Eternity 2. And that's been sucking up all my time. I know I've talked about the story, or the main part of the story being blah. I don't know what else to call it. Because these are really talented people. They've got really good artwork. They've got great gameplay. And that's really what this game is about. It's really about the game. It's really about this beautiful, well over-designed, I wouldn't say over-designed, redefined real-time with pause experience. And that's why I love the game. But the story is just atrocious. The story is in the way. And there's all these plot points that are just so redundant. Like that scene where you have the gods talk to you in Deadfire. And they're like, can you please go after that god we can't find? And they do it like 4 times. And it just becomes annoying. It becomes redundant. And it's as if they don't know what to do. Like you have gods, they don't know what to do. They're calling you, and you don't know what to do. And you're like, well, I'll keep following him. Okay, I'm following him again. And then the 3rd time, oh, I'm still following him. We don't know what he wants yet. And the 4th time, oh, I know what he wants. We don't know what to do about that, and we can't do anything about it. It's one of the most silliest scenarios I've seen in a story, in a production that should be elevated. It should be more than just running around well, not running, you're actually on a boat, boating around on a bunch of archipelagos. And that is fun. Like that's the thing. The game is fun. It's stupid because you're just randomly going places. Like just today, I was just waltzing around in my boat, and I found a vampire island, which is, it's a fantasy genre. You're in medieval, magical, European colonial waters. Fine, okay. But instead of it being vampire, it's with an F. It's vampire. It's like, oh wow, bravo, guys! You really made things special. And as soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh god, what does this remind me of? A vampire stronghold. Well, I immediately thought of another real-time with pause game, which I'm sure some of you might know about, and that would be Baldur's Gate 2. In Baldur's Gate 2, they had a vampire. She was a secondary character, a villain, and it was tied into the plot. It had to do with the story of John Irenicus getting his power back and getting his immortality back. And he had a sister who went the route of vampirism. And that was one simple way of tying it into an opposition you have to face. But it wasn't just an opposition you had to face. They tied it into the level design. They tied it into your potential romantic interest, and a location you have to revisit 2 or 3 times. And that is a very smart way of designing levels, designing a real-time with pause level. As well, your romance character could be turned into a vampire. Then there's an entire subquest to convert them back to normal. It's just like that level of detail is what you're expecting. You want that kind of fantasy trope not to be subverted, but to be used in a new way. And that's all we really want out of stories. And I don't know why people don't do that anymore, or try to do something new. And it just seems awkward that we can't find these good stories and games that we've been expecting from studios that should be able to do it. I don't know if you guys have been waiting for that in other genres, or maybe in comic books or what have you. I haven't really seen the fantasy genre in other media to say that it's been evolving or it's been new, or maybe, hey, we should probably get some writers and start a project. And that's why I've been looking at Kickstarter, just to see if there's anything out there. And sometimes there isn't, but very rarely you'll find something. So anyway, I'm on this pirate mini level. It's like a pirate city, and you just randomly chance upon it, and you're just randomly there, and there's no buildup. I guess maybe it's a quest line from hunting down. What do they call it? There's all these things you have to hunt down for side quests just to get cash. And I was just traveling on the map, and boom, okay, fine. So you just walk in, and there's a vampire bar. And you're like, okay, this is stupid. A vampire bar. All right, sure. And you walk in, and everyone's like, hey, can I get you something? And it's like blood. It's like, I'm not drinking blood. Like, and no one bats an eye. It's like, oh, you're not a vampire, huh? And I'm just sitting there. This is such a stupid scenario. I mean, it could have been done well. Obviously, you could have made it funny. It could have been entertaining. But as soon as that happens, everyone's out to get you, and then you begin to learn that the vampire, or the vampire, the vampire village or town island has been mind controlling people to become vampires. And I don't know why that's a thing or why that's necessary. So you just, hey, I guess I'll just kill everyone here because they're bad. And that's what you do. And it turns out some dude was some first mate of some captain that abandoned them or was waiting for them too long on an island. So somehow he figured out how to become a vampire, and he made everyone vampires. And he's been that way ever since. And that's it. That's the story. And so they're going, why is this in the game? Why would you ever bother to have, like, there are vampires, like in Skyrim, there's a vampire. There's a big subquest. I don't think it's on the main plot line, but it's a big detailed thing. You can become a vampire. They made DLC for a vampire. It's this whole route you can take. That's fine. It's an open world game. That's the idea. In a focused game like this, where it's not really open world, I wouldn't say the pirate experience, the traveling around is open world. You're just going in any direction on a 2D map and discovering stuff without any quest markers. So it's kind of fine. But again, if you're not going to tie it into something, into a side character or a sub character or whatever their sidekick system is, I don't even know what that is. It's basically an NPC you don't make yourself that you can get for free as opposed to buying one. It has its own sound set. Whoop-de-doo. If it's not tied into any other system, then why have it? Why have a fantasy scenario like elves and fairies and trolls and this and that if it's not going to amount to anything? Like this, the need for fantasy, the need for world building for the sake of it is pretty worthless. And as much as I love exploring the cities, the European music-ish Renaissance flavor or flair with the colonial attitude of these trading companies at each other's throats, and then there's this the two aspects of the tribalism. There's the actual tribes, and they're broken apart, and then there's the main tribe, which is controlled, and they're in a main city. That is compelling. That is interesting to walk through and to experience as a video game as you can. And that's why I find the setting interesting, the same way you might find the setting of, let's say, a futuristic setting like Mass Effect or Star Trek or Star Wars. It's the environment. It's that future world that it's magical enough, or it's interesting enough. Like Star Trek is interesting not because there's magic and technology, although technology is part of it. It's because everyone's evolved. Everyone is now nicer to each other. They've gone past money. They've gone past food. They've gone past all these problems that we have. And now they're dealing with this better world. What is that like? And I'd like to see what artists can come up with. So that's why we consume that kind of media. So whenever I play one of these games, I always harken back to other real-time with pause games and go, gee, Baldur's Gate 2 did this 10 years ago. Planescape did this 19 years ago. Fallout did this when Fallout 2 came out. I thought Fallout 2 is pretty much the pinnacle of what we've experienced with the Fallout series. That was where things really were unique, and they could have taken those in other directions. And of course, we know what happened to Fallout. We know what happened to Planescape, or we know what happened with Obsidian. And Obsidian is still our best bet. And now it's lost. It's lost Avalon a while back, but even he is just one guy. You can see his handiwork on the first Pillars of Eternity game, the characters that he wrote, which were Durance and Grieving Mother. Durance was a mixed bag for me. He was interesting, definitely. He was definitely one of the more curious ones because he was religious and it was ultimately a religious theme. But it had to do with Grieving Mother, and she was associated with the subplot of the Hollowborn children. Now, what's interesting about Chris Avallone is he actually made an interview this year about Japanese RPGs, and he's specifically talking about Final Fantasy VI. I think he called it Final Fantasy III or whatnot. And he was saying he was really impressed with the linear storytelling and the way that they decided to just blow up the world. Like, that takes risk. He said that the Japanese people are not afraid of taking risks to do something different and see where it goes. And if you look at all the Final Fantasies, I don't even know past 12 what they are anymore. I've stopped playing Final Fantasy Brave Exvius on my emulator as well as my phone a while back. It just doesn't interest me. I have other things to do with my phone and my time than to grind for levels and unlock Sephiroth or whatever. And he said that they're there to take risks, and you will get big cutscenes. And that's the only thing he doesn't like was the cutscenes were too much. They were too long, and there wasn't enough role playing in the traditional Western style of role playing with D&D, because that's where he comes from. He comes from that background of D&D style, pen and paper style gaming, which is totally fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with one or the other. He's just doing comparison, and he's saying Japanese RPGs can do linear storytelling better, which I thought was interesting. Not to say that that's the only way to do it, and that's the best way to emulate. But if you look at the later games, like the Dragon Quest series, the Persona series with was it 5 now? These are pretty well established franchises that aren't going to stop, I don't think, anytime soon. And good on them. I'm not a proponent of the Dragon Quest series. I think I like the first one up to 4. I'll leave that to the fans of the series. I'm sure that's the bright Akira Toriyama palette and the wonderful medieval world and slimes and metal slimes and what have you. It's all cutesy and fun and wonderful. It's a fun little experience. It's just nothing I'm really sinking my teeth into to go back to and say, oh boy, I can't wait to see the next iteration of spiky-haired heroes. It just doesn't really do me well. So that's why I wanted to sort of bring up E3. Not that I know too much what's going on, but the fact that E3 doesn't look like anything new. There's some interesting things, but I can't think of anything that I'm excited over. There's that one game from Sony, I think it was called Days Gone, which is taking years and years to come out. It's another zombie game. Again, I'm not against using fantasy tropes. It's how it's done. And that looked like you were being chased by a giant zombie horde and doing things that you would think you would do in a contemporary American style scenario akin to The Walking Dead. I could be wrong. So yeah, who knows how that's going to turn out? But that's Sony. They're doing what? The Last of Us Part 2, again, another zombie game that has a big following. So I'm glad that it's finally continuing its story. It seemed like it was going in a totally different direction, which is cool. And what was the other one? Oh, of course, Death Stranding by the main man himself, Kojima. So yeah, nothing really catching my eye. Nothing really I'm excited over. Microsoft, I have no idea what they're doing. There's a rumor about Fable 4 in terms of RPGs, but that's who can do justice to the Fable franchise? Is it Microsoft? I don't know. It's possible. They were already bought out, or Lionhead was already bought out, I think, at Fable 2. So I don't know if any influence is going to happen later on. And who knows what Microsoft has planned. They're always doing something with hardware, so hard to say. Then there's the wonders of Bethesda and their crazy social marketing campaign, which I think was last week. And they were doing pictures of Big Ben and 514, and I don't know what's going on there with the pink. It was a big Rage 2 marketing thing. I don't know what Rage even is, so I can't really talk about it. I haven't played it. Don't care. Yes, I will mention Cyberpunk 2077, but again, we have no information, so I'm not really excited about it. If they had a trailer or if they had something to work with aside from a few years ago, then I'd be excited. But again, it's nothing for me to care about. And there's no mention of Elder Scrolls 6. I think there was a cute little stop motion animation video of like 10-20 seconds they released lately. Something about Fallout, something about Elder Scrolls, but absolutely no mention of Starfield or whatever that IP is going to be. So yeah, nothing really interesting for there. The one thing I will talk about is Nintendo. And they have Pokemon, which is Pokemon RPG, but Pokemon's pretty much always been an RPG and at its core, not the offshoots, not all that other stuff. But yeah, it's been an RPG. You go around, you explore, you collect things, they upgrade, and you fight them. That's pretty much how it goes. But they did say something about Metroid Prime 4. Now, I'm a fan of the Metroid Prime series. I thought it was perfectly acceptable to be a standalone one-shot, and Metroid Prime was just this beautiful combination of actually being able to have a voiceless narrative or a voiceless protagonist and still care about your character. And I don't know how and why exactly that is. I can tell you that Samus Aran is a bounty hunter, and their job is to explore and hunt things down, so you don't really need much conversation. It's pretty much straightforward. But when they incorporated the scanning mechanic and they threw in alien language and words, that was a cool idea. And I thought just such an elegant design to put that. So does it make sense to make sequels? Sure. Were they anything like the original? Not really. I thought the second one was kind of off. The third one was more return to form, and just absolutely the most outstanding boss battles you've ever had, at least I've seen, notwithstanding the past few years, like Shadow of the Colossus battles and what have you. But just like levels or the boss battles happens on multiple levels, multiple forms. It's just really crazy action, first-person shooting adventure, and what you expect from Metroid Prime. So that's the only thing from Nintendo I noticed. I don't know what's so special about the next Smash Brothers or the next Bayonetta or the next Zelda. I have no idea. Doesn't really interest me, but maybe there's something that storytelling might change. And I think I have to talk about Square Enix. We're going to talk about Japan or RPGs at all. There might be a Final Fantasy coming out. I don't even know what number it's at. I think it's 17 or 16. I don't remember because I lost track after 12 or 11 or 11X or 12X, 12X2. I don't know the numbers anymore. The numbering system is just silly. If you're going to use Roman numerals, use Roman numerals. Don't start giving me Roman numerals X, 1, 2. Doesn't make sense. I actually have a Metroid Prime 2 Echoes shirt I used to sleep in. So yeah, it's funny when you have a family or friend who works at Best Buy to get all this swag or merch. They just hand it out to you. So I have all these shirts and crap from video games I've never played. Let's see. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. No, I haven't really got into the remakes of Tomb Raider. Kingdom Hearts 3. That's a long time coming. So bravo on Square just selling what works. I guess that's the right way to go in the franchise business. Just keep pumping out the sequels. So yeah, that's E3. That's all I know about E3. Unless you guys know something else about E3 I don't know. And there's something going on in the news world that you'd like to share. I'm kind of curious because I've been so into reading and playing Pillars of Eternity, trying to find a story in there to get some value, and I just can't. So if you guys know anything about E3 that is interesting, what's new? A Ghost of Tsushima. I don't know what that is. I wish I knew. And most of this content is very odd to me. All these new names. I'm always happy to find out new IPs, but usually that's in the Kickstarter realm, not the E3 realm, the AAA realm. There's nothing. Yeah, I can't think of anything. Brianna Pratchett of the Writers' Room. Maybe. I don't know. I'm really concerned with Mary DeMarle from Eidos when I'm going through Mankind Divided, and there's so much nice level design. There's so much nice moments, and there's like really stupid moments. Like it's as if no one said, "Hey, Mary, maybe you shouldn't do that," or "Hey, maybe talk to JJB about designing the level differently so it doesn't look as like a cluttered mess, and it looks like someone actually works here or did something here." Like have a balance between story and level design. I think I'd like to see that. What is my favorite Suikoden game? Ooh. There's a good question. I love Suikoden. And I was thinking of Suikoden almost half the time I'm playing Pillars of Eternity because it feels like a pirate adventure. So I really like number 2. I think that's the general response you get from Suikoden fans because there's a lot more drama in number 2. It's not as clear as Suikoden the first game because that was started it off and you play the bad guys and you fight your dad. And 2 just really it was more of the same but done in a different way. It was a slight twist and it was a fun experience all the way through. That didn't have to be something more. It didn't have to do much more because the first game was like a taste of this big ass RPG with all these characters and all this stuff you had to do and all these mini games and all this exploration. So they just wanted a more refined version of that. And 2 is really just satiated that for me personally. What they did with 3 and 4 is very telling of what is the innovation behind the mindset and how to tell a story. Because 3 was the jump to 3D. So as soon as you did that, things changed around. And you can't just go around having a jump in technology and then just forgetting all your game mechanics. You can't just forget about what the original premise of Suikoden is. So in order to do that, they had to do something new, and they used the Trinity point system or Trinity site system, which is very confusing. And just thinking of it makes me, how would you even have an idea? How would you even have a game design to make something like that is so complicated and having this constantly evolving chapters? Like every time you finish a chapter or a plot point, you go to a second chapter, and you can switch which book you want to read. So you're reading chapter 1 from one book, then you're reading chapter 2 from another book, and then you're reading chapter 3 from maybe the first book, and then you're going to another book. It's very confusing. And I don't think I could do that in writing, let alone in a video game. And you can only get away with that sort of experience in a video game. And it was just awesome to do it, but it was confusing to play it and follow it. So I have to give it points for that. Then there was 4, which was the pirate adventure, which is probably the most relatable to Pillars of Eternity. I never finished it. I have it on emulator. I got to like the last hour of it, and I just lost interest. Then there was 5, which is a return to form, to 2. So I kind of put 5 and 1 in the same boat, whether I like it better. And then there was the remake. There was Tierkreis. There was the mobile version, which was based off 4. Order of the not Order of the Plume. That's Valkyrie Profile. What was it called? Anyway, I played that one. That was fun. It was Suikoden Tactics. That's what it was. That was interesting, but I wouldn't say it was very good. It was okay. It was, as a tactical game, it was fine. So yeah, between 2 and 5, those are my favorites. My thoughts on New Vegas. I reinstalled it last month, and I'm going through it. It's fantastic. I love it. I love all the mods. I don't put in too many mods, just enough to make it more interesting. And I like how the new mods changed the upgrade system with cybernetics. I think that was pretty cool. I'm trying to remember the name of the mod. I can't for the life of me, but yeah, I always go back to that. Multiple perspectives. I don't mind that, provided you know why you're doing, because when you say a multiple perspective, all you're saying is another character, for the most part. Unless you're talking about time travel or some other element that you do a flashback, or it's an aspect of the character or the metaphysic of the world you're in. I don't mind it, but then you're talking about, do you want to do a hard science fiction or do you want to do a soft science fiction? For example, what's that book I read a while back, which wasn't really a science fiction story, it was a romance story. It was called The Time Traveler's Wife. And that was like, it told time travel in an absolutist sense, so that you can time travel, but you can't change the past. You cannot, even though you're going to the past, you can't change it. And that's because time is immaterial. It's already established. Whether you go back to experience it, it makes no difference. So I don't mind it. It depends on how it's done. And when you're saying multiple perspectives, you could say, okay, well, I could read a fantasy book that has like a dozen or so characters, and every chapter it changes. And that's fine, provided it connects. And in some cases it works, like with Terry Brooks, with his Shannara series. You have all these characters, and they go through generations, and there's sons and daughters of heroes. And that's fine. But if the characters aren't related to the main story, then it's useless. So that's the problem with doing fantasy genre stories, is you have gigantic narratives that don't really mean anything aside from describing the environment you're in. And it takes a while to establish a new character and describe, and then their environment, and then why they're there, just to get the story wrapped around your head. And that's why you need children or people who know someone else. Oh, okay, you knew the hero character. Okay, I'm with you now. He's going to do the same thing as you are. Oh, you're not the same as he is. Why? Oh, you're an assassin. You're evil, but you're not. You're like an anti-hero. Oh, okay, fine. So characters like that pop up. One that reminds of that was like the Druid of Shannara. You get all these characters in different perspectives. One's an assassin. One's a broken wizard. One's a magical being that no one knows about and everyone's charmed by. So there's reasons for why these characters exist within the narrative. And if you go beyond having, a 3-party setup, 4 or 5, your stories are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're wasting everyone's time. And yes, Anthem is going to be popping up on the EA showcase on E3. I just forgot about that because it's, there's been no information on Anthem so far, aside from whatever Casey Hudson tweets every week or so. So, yeah. Oh, my buddy is online with me. I didn't even see you there. How's it going, man?
Oh, sorry. I'm a bit dazed and confused right now. Hello.
Yes, you have a busy week. It's a long weekend here in North America, or at least in Canada. So I don't know how it's going on in your neck of the woods, but hopefully you could take another day off from all your laborious work outside.
Yeah. Flipping screws. Never mind. No.
Flipping screws. Sounds like fun. Okay.
Yeah. It's just one of the things where you have to screw things together, but at the most awkward angle possible, because you're holding up a weight and yet trying to feed this one thing through and then screw it in, and you have to get it all tight, and if not, then the whole frame will just collapse. But yeah, that's all just anyway, what are we talking about? Sorry.
I was talking about E3 and whatever Anthem is doing, and we have no idea because no new news has come out about Anthem, and that's about it. I talked about whole bunch of E3 showcases from some bigger publishers, but nothing. The only thing I'm partially interested in is Metroid Prime 4.
All right.
But everything else, nothing.
Is that on the Switch, Metroid Prime, or is that on the new console that Nintendo's doing?
I think they're doing a port of a few of those games, but I don't care.
Fair enough.
Nothing interests me.
I know. When you showed me that Rage trailer, I was just like, is this Borderlands?
Yeah, it looked like Borderlands, but it was live action. So I was like, why do they have actors?
Yeah, that's really peculiar. I don't get that. It's a bit creepy. A bit. Not sure creepy is the right word, actually, but it's just a bit odd. Like they would do something like that. Whereas it's is it id Software that are doing Rage 2 or?
No, it is Bethesda.
Oh, and the actual Bethesda itself. Okay.
Oh, the actual development studio. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. Because id did the first one, didn't they? And
right.
Then they had Doom. When I looked at the gameplay footage as well, it was in a brief YouTube thing. It looked kind of similar to Doom, the recent Doom 2016, which is good. You know, at least they're taking good if they are taking advanced gameplay from that and just putting it in more open world, I suppose that'd be fine. Yeah,
technically it's always going to be good when id Software does something, especially when you have, well, I don't know if what's his name's there anymore. Who's our Lord and Savior of the creator of Doom. Oh,
not Romero, but the other one.
No. He's the designer. Yeah, the actual god of the guy who invented the genre. Where's my shrine when I need it?
You're rummaging through the Bibles of game design.
The guy who created it. Anyway, he's not there anymore, as far as I remember. He's with the not the 3D guys, the guys with the goggles. What are they called?
Oculus Rift.
Oculus, yeah, the Oculus guys. He's there now, figuring out all the hardware technical glitches, which unfortunately, Carmack. There it is, Carmack.
So, thank you, Red. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my brain just went, who is our God and Savior again? Oh, right. I'm trying to go through Deadfire, and it's like, oh, how many gods are there? This guy, what is he? Who is this guy? Who's this guy's name? Why are you guys trying to rip off Gaiman again? It's like, God of Fish and Thunderstorms. Right. Okay. Yeah. Got that one. So, yeah, Rage 2, there's cars, and I don't know.
It looks like a step up from the previous one, but it's just, I didn't buy the other one because it was just way too short from the people that bought it. It's like, it's all right, but it's just short in a kind of pseudo-openy worldy kind of game. You know, it's like very Borderlands, like we have like specific levels that you can like explore around in, but it's all compartmentalized. So
yeah, if they can do a proper Mad Max experience, then great. But not even the Mad Max IP was a good Mad Max experience. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like a reasonable endeavor unless they get that whole I'm a rebel on the run in a post-apocalyptic world with punks with razor blades chasing me.
Well, the curious thing of that one is just that in the first game you were an Ark survivor. You're one of the people that were buried before the asteroid hit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what it was all about. And obviously, I'm not sure whether the plot was basically like you guys have something inside you, like the nanotech or something like that. And obviously that's why the new government now is basically trying to hunt you down and use you for something. Like, you know, you can access the equipment. I don't know. But I don't know how they're going to do that on, because the ending basically involved of Rage 1 of like all the arcs popping up. So unless there's like multiple people now, I don't know. So
I just reminded of the reboot. Now we're talking about franchises and sequels. The reboot of God of War, which everyone seems to love talking about in the past month. And I was about to do a live stream just on that, because when you read the stuff from Metacritic or OpenCritic, before the game came out, like everyone gets their review copy, the main chains of news avenues, and they're just gushing, like, a masterpiece. This thing is immaculate. It's 10 out of 10. It's the best game, the best game of a generation. I'm just sitting there going, It's God of War. Okay. You play a psychopathic daddy. You're a monster. What are you gonna do? This isn't the Blacklist, where you have a guy who's in control of a contemporary world who's had a history of defeating and killing people, and he's on every wanted list and whatnot. This is fantasy button mashing. There's no, and you have a son now. Ooh.
Oh boy. That's the human element. That's like he tears people's skin off and whatnot, but he's a good father too. Takes him out to the park every now and then. Make sure he gets son to school on time.
That's it. And of course, your son is basically Take The Last of Us 2, put it into instead of playing like in that dynamic, put it in more of a BioShock Infinite gameplay scenario. And then throw in the God of War franchise. Because apparently Kratos has to kill every pantheon of the gods in every mythology. So, we went through Greek, we went through Roman, or I guess the same thing, really. And now we're going to do Norse. What's next? Like Indian? Are we going to go
Egyptian?
Egyptian, Swahili,
Aztec, Maya? It's like he's going to defeat the calendar. That's the big next one. He's going to defeat the Mayan calendar. He's going to
Chinese calendar, Japanese pantheon. What's going on? All he's going to do is find a god, tear him from his jawbone off, and then take his skull and hang it on his head, and then maybe talk to his son about being good. Do as I say, not as I do. Ba ba ba.
They could have called it Atheist versus God or something.
just have you could have put any dude in that role, and he would have a boomerang hammer or boomerang sword or boomerang or Xena warrior daughter. What?
Xena. I don't knock Xena. That was a good show back in the day.
I think Xena was the inspiration for God of War anyway, so probably. Well, it's Kevin Sorbo, then it became Xena. Then you're like,
He was Hercules, wasn't he? Anyway,
yeah, the 90s, yeah.
I remember that. He also did a show called
Andromeda.
Yeah, was that Gene Roddenberry, or is his wife, or was that her Final Conflict?
There was both. Gene Roddenberry did Earth Final Conflict as well as Andromeda.
Oh, right, okay. Because I didn't mind that, actually, Andromeda. That was pretty cool. Then they went, then they did some kind of paradigm.
It started off really generic, really oh my God, this is so boring and silly and nothing new. And then they started throwing in philosophy. Then they went to time travel and dimensions, and the characters started getting dark, and it was like, whoa, it's war. The war was always going on, but it was after the war, and it was kind of like at the time we were getting a flux of sci-fi. There was Farscape, there was Firefly, all these weird shows were coming out, and for some stupid reason, Andromeda kept getting renewed. Who's watching this? I can't watch this shit. And then actors appear on this thing. It's like, hey, it's Daniel from Stargate. What the hell is he doing on there? And the guy who played the Nishian, his only claim to fame before that, he was on All My Children. His name was Noah. He was this big black dude, and he was like a love interest or something, and then he gets killed, or he falls off a bridge or something, and it's and then I recognized his voice and physique. I'm like, hey, it's that guy from the American soap operas. What is he doing? Oh my God, he's a Nishian. That's cool. And then the Nishians are this whole race of, not race, but they're an offshoot of the humans who believed in power, a retarded version of basically what Nishi was talking about. And I thought that was like, that's the show. This is what you got to do. And then there was all kinds of other philosophies. Like one of the guys who was a priest. He was a carnivore? He was this ugly.
Yeah, he was one of the races that goes around just devours literally other races and what have you. And but he's got a more religious stance that kind of keeps him in check.
Right. And I was looking at that, and then I was also looking at Farscape. I was like, well, Farscape's like already achieved that the first episode, and it's going in every which direction every other episode. It's like that's the funny thing about Farscape is it is episodic, but it's following this random crazy course of a storyline, whereas Star Trek is just episodic purely, and where this is like, okay, this happened last episode, and now we have this guy chasing us, but now we're going to jump into a nebula, and this crazy stuff happens, and then somehow he's getting pregnant on his leg or whatever, and you're like, what is going on? So stuff like that would always be occurring.
Yeah, Farscape's one of those. There's a guy I follow on YouTube called SF Debris, if you've heard of it.
Oh yeah,
I follow him and whatnot. He got me into Farscape, and he basically says that it's an alien. Like Farscape is an alien experience because it takes sci-fi tropes and then just turns them on the head. Like, you know, when they do the body swat episode, that's really a fun episode. I love that one. It's actually one of the better episodes.
Oh yeah, that's the great thing because it's so wild. They're just having fun, and they get away with it because they follow the basic concepts of storyline. You have a scenario, you have a main character, they have a thing to tackle, and it follows an overarching plot. Not a big overarching plot. It's not like this, like Babylon 5 overarching plot, but it's enough to understand the premise, which is this person getting teleported into a far part of the galaxy and having something inside of him that he didn't know about, and people are looking for and then discovering that. And that's great. That's all you need to tell a crazy space opera. Well, maybe a little bit more, but it's enough to get people interested and say, oh, wow, explosions. Oh, wow, crazy blue aliens and chicks beating the crap out of people with, I don't know, toothbrushes or whatever. Like everything was alive. Everything was an alien. Like you had like aliens cleaning your teeth, and you had an alien ship. Everything was cool. So that was the cool thing about Farscape. They just went nuts with animatronics and set design.
Yeah, because it was Hendrickson was part of the crew design aspect, weren't they? Yeah, people did like the Muppets and whatever.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, basically, was it his son that got into it? It was basically because they were looking at the idea of how they're going to build up a new science fiction show, and obviously got like CGI, but back then it wasn't as good. So they just went, why don't we try animatronics and puppets? And
and it
sticks out.
It was an Australian production, and I don't think I couldn't really. Well, maybe the Americas could have done it. I think Canada, not at the time, but today they could have done it if you're aware of Toronto and our film, our crazy vibrant film TV culture we have up here is it's not amazing, but it's pretty wild. Like we'll get an American show, what's it called? Designated Survivor, which just got canceled, and they'll film it in Toronto. They'll do The Expanse, which just got canceled. You know, they'll film it.
Got canceled. Really?
Yeah, all kinds of shows got canceled. It's crazy.
All right. That's unfortunate. I was going to watch. That was on my next to-do list, really. So
that is, yeah, I'd say nowadays the number one sci-fi show to watch, with an overarching plot line, with characters that are interesting, with a show that kills off its characters, and Elias Tefexis, as much as I follow him on Twitter, he loved the show so much. He only had like 2 or 3 episodes, but he ended up doing all the mocap for the aliens. What are they called again? The whatever the particle, whatever the crazy particle alien thing is. He was doing all the humans that were transformed. So you see him all these dots on his face and trying to save the Expanse. He's always posting about it now, and we're hoping that Netflix picks it up because that's where all good shows go, and bad shows. Actually, all shows go to Netflix. Yeah.
I was going to say, like a lot of film industries, like done in Canada as well. Like British Columbia was a big place for it because that's where they did Stargate.
Yep.
And Battlestar Galactica as well. That was filmed in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
What else was there now? I know Andromeda was Andromeda done there? Did you say?
I don't know, but that's an interesting thing about Battlestar and Stargate. I always look to the Stargate franchise and say, well, that's the lighthearted sci-fi. It's the adventure-seeking sci-fi that's not too crazy. And then when they try to do something edgy or dark with Stargate Universe, no one liked it, or it didn't get enough likes, even though it was, to me, it's still the superior Stargate of all of them, just because they did something new, they did something dramatic, and it was just pulse pounding. Like, holy crap, these guys going to survive this entire episode? Like, holy gee. Then it happens again the next week. You're like, what?
The thing about Stargate was is that the first you can definitely see the tonal shift from the first Stargate of SG1 of I've forgotten his name now, but he was one of the executive producers, and he left after season 4, and then they went from that kind of very militaristic kind of military sci-fi into a more light-hearted one, and then obviously that translated into Atlantis, which was a lot more popular. But a lot of people tend to realize that why was it popular? And it was only popular because people were actually enamored with the characters rather than the writing.
Yes, you're right.
Its stories were very formulaic. You could see exactly what happened. Like, halfway through the episode or 20 minutes through the episode, you'd be like, Rodney pulls out his PDA and goes, "Oh no!" And you're like, "Yeah, here we go, beat for beat." But you're looking in the action between David Hewlett, Joe Flanagan, Jason Momoa, and Rachel Hewlett. I remember their names. And what they did to Rainbow Sun Franks and what was the face now? Dr. Weir, Tori Higginson's character. That was just criminal. What they did to those two.
It was kind of interesting because I can explain why that show went bad, and it's probably because of those scenarios. They wanted to go for the dramatic scenes,
yes,
the tragic scenes, and that's not what the show's about. The show's not about sadness and overcoming tragedy. It's about adventure. It's about going out and exploring things, and
it's not even that though. That was the problem. It got into this you can tell that the writers really didn't like the actors.
Really?
Because if you look at I've forgotten his name now. Jonathan I've forgotten his name now. The lead actor who basically plays Shepard. I've just said his name now. I've just completely forgot it. He was actually trying to buy the Stargate franchise back, wasn't he? And he was like, yeah, basically the writers pretty much, they were kind of writing themselves into like deliberate like black holes. And they were just kind of like, obviously they wanted to set up a universe, which, okay, I get the understanding of like they want to try something new, but you don't kill off your most popular show in the process. You keep that one going as the other ones, proceeding along.
Well, think of the same formula with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now, Deep Space Nine was supposed to be the counter Star Trek, because everything in Star Trek up to a point was like, okay, we're the good guys. We're going to go out and explore, bada bada ba. And so this new idea was like, okay, we're not going to be exploring. Things are going to come to us. Everything's broken. Everyone's having problems, and that's to me more interesting as an idea for writing a new story. Like, okay, I'm going to have all these flaws in our characters, but they still have the same formula. So it's still the same formula that a Star Trek episode like The Next Generation would have. It's just in another part of the galaxy at the same time. And that's not what the premise was supposed to be. It's supposed to be things are breaking down, and they're getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, that was the exact same. Because what happened was that, let's say you take TNG and DS9, was that DS9 had different writers from TNG, so they had that separation. With Universe, on the other hand, you had the same tired writers that you had from SG1 and Atlantis, because they were actually the writers were doing the same two things consecutively at the same time. So you had the same group of people who wrote that series who wrote both series into the ground, and then they're moving on to another one, and you're wondering why you're getting the same stuff out of them. It's like you need new people. You need to get rid of them.
Right. But if you look at how DS9 was successful, if you can call it successful, I think it was. Yeah, it started off very, very safe, and then very, very boring. For the first 2-3 years, it was like, okay, I'm watching.
I'd say it's obviously you could sort of say the same thing about TNG, where you got the good episodes that stand out, but I think DS9 kind of at the start
it was very plain, very, very milk toast, or Melba toast, very and then the religion came in, and then when the war started coming in, and then the founders were like waging war, and then the Klingons came. It's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. This is where all the power players are coming in, and then the what is it? I can't remember the name of the space aliens that were inhabiting the wormhole.
The Prophets.
The Prophets. they were getting more involved. Then they're hearkening back to why Cisco was there. It's all this cosmic reasoning. You're like, oh, this is what you want. This is the main plot line we were waiting for, and it took so long to get up to that. So maybe that was the point. Maybe they wanted to start small and build it up the same way Babylon 5 started out small, where the first year was just sort of, again, very plain, very straightforward. And then once you have all the pieces, then they racketed it up in the second and third. And it was really, really detailed, and all the characters and all the subplots and all connected together. So that made sense. But when you compare it to Universe is like, okay, we're in a really bad place, and we're still in a really bad place, and we're still in a really bad place. It keeps going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I remember the interview they had with the guy who plays Daniel and Jack. They said they had that one scene in the intro or the pilot of SGU, and they said, well, we started riffing for 20 minutes, and they said, oh, we can't use that. Like, oh, so we're not going to do comedy. It's like, no, you just do your scenes. And that was it. So they were just there to show face. They weren't there to like, be themselves as they were.
Right. Yeah, because one of the things that I had brought, like I say, I love the premise of Universe, like that thing's on its journey, like they're not going home. Like, that's it. They are not going home. There's no point in that. But the problem that I had with it was just the characters were so unlikable. Like, the only character which I really liked was probably Rush, Eli. Mostly because Robert Carlyle, I find he's a fantastic actor. Yeah. Young when he wasn't a dick.
Wasn't drunk.
Yeah, I mean, the other one, Telford, he was better, actually, if you really want me to be honest. If they swapped the roles around, Telford would have been a better foil to Rush than Young would be, just because of a colonel would actually act the way of how he would act. He wouldn't be a very aggressive, very anti-civilian kind of way. I mean, I know what they were trying to do, but there's just some things that irked me off a little bit. Like, well, first of all, you got the constant pining for Earth, and then you had the bloody magical stones of mystery, which was just like if they would have just kept it, like you're stuck now, that's it. And then add in some new tech from, like, this is a group of different ancients. They're more cybernetic than they were genetic. This is why we can't access the technology, because we don't have the literal plugins to interface with it. I would have been cool with that. That would have been fine. But they were kind of, at the same time, I kind of got as well, they had like a very steampunk look to it, which was just like, you can make things alien without making it look, just because it's old, does it mean because it has to look old? You could see rivets on the thing. I was just like, who built this thing?
Yeah, it very much looked like iron, like cast iron, and then
like brass and shade of paint. Then you had the big, like, it's like supposed to be an explorer sort of vessel, and they had the big, like the tri-barreled siege. Kind of like, who are you fighting? It's like, we're explorers, heavily armed explorers.
Well, there were things in that which I never quite got along with. Like Scott, he was okay. He was okay as a character, but I thought he would have gotten killed off because he was too naive and he was just sort of following orders. And him and other characters were sort of like forming their own cliques. I like that. Yeah. And I was like, he's got to be the first one to go because he's in charge of this little clique, and then he gets hit by an alien or something, whatever. But the relationship that he had with Chloe, I just could not believe it. I was like, wait a second, who are you shacking up with before? Someone named
that was the lieutenant, wasn't it? Or
Lieutenant James, yeah, James. I think her name was James. And like, here's this gorgeous military girl that you're already hooked up with. She's just like you. She loves you.
Well, she should have actually been the away member. I was like, that would have been. She was perfect for that role of being the lead. I was like, brilliant. I thought Scott was going to die and James was going to take over his role because she had all the traits, she had all the skills, all the experience. She was a ground pound. I know she was Air Force, but she was mostly ground. She wasn't a pilot or anything like that. She's like, she's got all this stuff. I was like, yes, finally.
She's strong. She has everything that he has, and she follows orders. It's like, yeah, this is exactly what you need. And then they introduced other characters, and they had this rebel group, and it was like, oh, okay.
Was that when the Lucian Alliance boarded?
Who are these guys? How did they get here? the alien stuff that was freaky. Like that actually made me go, oh my god, this is scary. With the Chloe getting mind raped and all this other stuff. And
well, that was the only thing that made her interesting. She was such a bloody like blank slate that she had to be abducted by aliens to inject a bloody personality into her.
The first time they did it, it made sense. The second time was like, okay, they're trying to get her back. The third time was like, okay, this is.
I did like the bit where they did the was it the drones? I think that was season 2. Where they had the drones hunting them, and the drones got smart. Like they actually started like camping where the type of stars that they could like recharge from.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was actually really good because that shows to me an active enemy, which is like we're clever, we're smart now. We've learned from you. We are evolving.
Yeah, there was a part. There was I can't remember what episode it was. I think it was second season where there's like, hey, there's a big empty bunch of junk. Let's go check it out.
Yes, that's when they first met them, and they all just starts activating. That was actually a legit good episode. I wasn't there. That and it was from the first season time. You know when you have the time loop through the Stargate.
Oh boy!
And that was good because it was showing characters actually expressing themselves by talking to one another. You know, the simple act of talk, but because they were viewing it from the view screen, nothing got resolved. No one advanced as a character as a result from that. You know. We only heard from Eli from a past iteration. It's just like, this would have been great.
I thought the time one had to do with the stones, and every time there's a stones episode, I'm like, ooh, this is not going to go well. Because it had to do with them being in the middle of something, and then they get cut off because of sunspot activity or some bullshit. And you're like, why are we doing this? Is this really necessary?
Yeah, I think if they would have got a new writing crew, in terms of like specifically for that kind of genre, that thing would have worked, you know, but because they had the same showrunners, they had the same writers from before, I kind of was not high hopes, especially like I say, how they treated previous characters like Tori Higginson and Rainbow Sun Franks. Like they invented this young lieutenant or lieutenant because he's a US Marine. And then they go and do nothing with them. And they're all scratching their heads going, what do we do with this young black guy? I know, let's make him a drug addict and very, very angry. You know, like, all right, okay. What do we do with the diplomat? Let's make a completely uncompromising, highly super militaristic. You know? All right, okay.
I remember when they interviewed Picardo at a con. Was it last year or this year? I can't remember. Yeah, it was last year. And he was like, oh, they're going to call me back? Okay. And they'll call me back for another episode of Atlantis. And then, oh, they want me again. Oh, great. This is fantastic. And then it's like, you want me for the whole season? You're like, me? Are you sure it's me? It's like, yeah, we want you. Like, oh, okay.
His character should have been what Tori Higginson's character, Dr. Weir, should have been.
Exactly.
Because the whole wheeling and dealing, actually deployment, like using leverage and kind of going, okay, let's talk about this. Instead, it was very... black and white. It was like
a third wheel half the time. It was just like, why are you here?
I really felt for her because she was just like, I think even in the interview, like the after interview, she was even like, you know, all the boys went off and did that, you know, the away team. She called them boys, but you know, all the boys went off doing things. She was like, give me something to do. I'm not doing anything on this show, pretty much. I'm just here to basically rubber stamp away missions, pretty much, you know. And
yeah, she should have been the diplomat, the one going on away teams and talking to tribes and trying to figure out how to stop the
Wraith, wasn't it?
The blood-sucking Wraith, yeah.
Oh, the Wraith. Oh, sorry.
More vampires, yeah.
What the Wraith were just basically Goa'uld 2.0 that basically sucked the life out of you. That was that's what they were, right? End of. Because it was just like, oh, we got a new domineering enemy that can't engage in close quarters combat, i.e. within 400 meters range. You know, that they're only reliant basically upon big spaceships that seemingly get destroyed every now and then. He's like, come on, you guys could, you know, when Mass Effect 2 is giving better ideas, you know you're in trouble, you know.
I liked how they figured out the Wraith's backstory, like how they were created. I thought that was interesting. I thought the idea of them having superior numbers and just ridiculous amounts of numbers, I never liked that, because if you are a species that's dependent on another species to survive, that means the other species has to be gigantic. You are like a little parasite. And for them to literally destroy the ancients and then just go to sleep, is like, what, that's it? Like they just outnumbered the ancients and killed them off, or the ancients ascended and that was it.
Oh yeah, the ancients went and buggered off, didn't they? Which another thing as well that Atlantis does is they do the typical here's the weapon that could destroy the enemy. Oh, but now we've broke it. Like,
yes,
oh,
yes.
And that was the I think it was the episode where they bring in the evil Asgard, and once again, rather than kind of going, we understand your situation, come with us to Atlantis, we'll protect you. You've been in a bad situation for the past 10,000 years. No, it's like, no, it's our way or the highway kind of thing. And then they have the Taurus device, if I remember it rightly. And it was the one that basically destroys them before they enter in hyperspace.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of, but it also destroys Stargates when they're active. And I was just like, the gate builders can turn the gate system off, right? They could just turn it off. They've done it before in previous episodes. I've seen the episode. Don't make me bring up continuity. Please don't, because it's going to be a nerd war and you're going to lose. And it's like, oh, no, we're not going to do this because of reasons. Like, all right, okay.
Well, the one episode I really hated was when they discover the ancients and they come back to Atlantis. They just handed it. It was like, oh, here's your. We're not going to tell you you're in a war right now. Or we're not going to tell you how to fight. We're not going to tell you how to win. Just okay, bye.
Yeah, the ancients. Next episode. Yeah, the ancients are all dead now. What the?
It was like, maybe we should sit down and talk. You're our progenitors. Like, hey, you've been away for a long time, and we've been fighting this war on your house. Here's what you need to do, because they're essentially humans. They're just humans, and they may have full control of the technology, but the technology is exactly the same. It's always been there. So if it's not going to do anything new, and you don't have any new tactics, and you don't have any new strategy, you're all going to die. And that's exactly what happens. And no one bothers to tell them this, and no one bothers to sit them down. It's like, oh, you're coming home. I guess we should be polite and leave.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's go. And they leave, and that's it. And you're like, oh.
Being fair, if I was to make an actual criticism of Atlantis for me, I didn't realize this at the time, because you don't realize the pain, or the damage done when things happen. But the damage done was when they remade contact with Earth, and the Earth reinforcements came through, and they started getting spaceships. That's when, to me, Atlantis actually officially ended. When I look back on it, because they ended up doing, it's like there's no threat anymore now, because the characters, they're all going to live, because there's no limited supplies anymore. Now they've got continuous supplies. They've got a spaceship. They've got all these things that they can add in later, all these additional things. So the threat level is completely, for me anyway, it's completely diminished. And the actual defense, it also undermines the Wraith as well as being a legitimate threat as well. Because if they because like the Goa'uld, they didn't evolve, they didn't adapt to the new threats or anything. They were just a kind of another mook bad guy, despite them saying that, oh, these guys are going to be really tough to kill, with a couple, 4 or 6 rounds to the chest, and then suddenly they're dead. Oh, right, they're really. I suppose they haven't invented body armor then.
Yeah, the Goa'uld did not change the technology. The Ori, I don't know exactly what they. I guess they had superior technology, but again, they didn't really change it much.
It was just basically Stargate basically rolls on this principle of they have a really powerful bad guy, and then they kind of go, oh, right, they're too powerful, so we'll just bump these. So it's a constant nerf and buffing that they're doing, and then they add in more bad guys, so they stack bad guys on top of one another. I mean, this is like someone's mentioning Baal there, obviously this was pre-Baal. So obviously then they added in the replicators, which because the Asgard were slotted in, and because the Asgard were too powerful, because they would just wipe everyone out. And rather than just saying, okay, the Asgard are the powerful, but they can't take on the number, if the Goa'uld united, then they would be pushed out. That's fine. I'm cool with that. But it's no. It's because the Asgard are taking on the replicators. And it's oh, Jesus Christ. And then, of course, they went to Atlantis. Oh, no, the replicators were actually invented in Atlantis. And it's oh, can we just invent something new? Crying out loud, can we just try exploring something new?
I never really took the science fiction aspect of exploration and discovery from Stargate series very seriously until they had Universe, because Universe was galaxies away, just constantly going to new galaxies, and you're like, couldn't you like explore?
It was like a very set. I mean, the bit where the found the seed ship, I think, pretty much set it up for me. Where the find is it the young lieutenant and the staff sergeant, or the Greer, I think his name was, and they find all the Stargates all like in the process of being built.
Greer was my favorite character. He was the best.
Yeah, he was good because he showed like the darker human side of things. With him being an NCO as well, he would obviously have a very different perspective. But when like they showed all the on board the seed ship, they had all the things in the bit, and Rush went, all right, this is how they built that. It's like, all right, and then just wanders off. It's like, this is the greatest, this is the pinnacle achievement of what the ancients have achieved, and you just walk away from it.
Yeah, like, they made a star. It's like, oh,
yeah,
maybe we should like learn. It's interesting that they actually plotted a course for you to travel to because the ship needs stars to fuel itself. So they're making a fuel. It doesn't make too much sense when you think about it, but if I can create a star so I can use it to fuel myself to keep traveling, why don't I do that on the ship I'm traveling on so I don't need to make fuel sources over there? Yeah. It's interesting. It's kind of strange, and it's really makes you go, whoa, that is really advanced and weird. So when you see stuff like that, or they mention stuff like, hey, these guys are traveling so far for so long, and they've planned this out so much in advance, there's got to be something they're doing aside from pure exploration.
Yeah.
There has to be some motivation. They can't just be like, hey, I'm a scientific god. I'm going to make stars, and then I'm going to throw a spaceship at them, and they're going to play like node pool, where I just bounce my ball and it just hits all the nodes, and then what? Like, what's the point? Like,
I was expecting this to be like a generational thing. Like you're now the next generation of people on board that vessel who are now trying to explore whatever the mystery of that thing was set up to be. I was like, that would have been perfect. So you see like the previous iterations, or the philosophy that comes behind for all the alien races.
Because with Stargate Atlantis, you had all this old technology that was turning back on, but it didn't really amount to the history of the ancients. It's like, oh, here's a failed experiment. Here was this experiment that didn't go anywhere. Whereas with Stargate Universe, you have a ship. These people were living in this thing, and they needed every single compartment for a certain reason. And then they start turning things on, and you're like, okay, this can now recharge our gear, and this is the bay for those drones, and like everything had a purpose. And if they were to discover something like the history of what the hell this ship has gone through, it would have made more sense. So when they first started jury rigging the water dispenser they have to get where they get water. Oh crap, we have to actually physically get, and the ice is contaminated. Like, oh shit, like that's a big problem. And if the story just kept going along those lines, like, oh, the ice is bad or water is bad, how do we filter it? Do we get a better filter? How do we find a recycler for the air? Like all these problems. And this is like old school problems. These aren't like high-end stuff. This is relatable stuff. So you could say, okay, I know what's going on here. And keep going with that low-level tech in a high-tech world, which wasn't really high-tech because it looked like it was, someone's dungeon or something.
If it looked more utilitarian, I think it would have been more better. Like it was designed to last for like potentially millions of years. That kind of thing. It's like down to its bare bones.
It's so powerful and lasts the test of time, and it has to be basic, and it has to work all the time.
Easily replaced and things like that, yeah.
And there have to be some sort of like connection between a humanoid to look at something and say, how do I fix this? And then there's like, I don't know, a telepathic link or a download, or something happens in this crazy sci-fi way that caused them to then start fixing this thing. And then like they lost a day of their life, or there's a clone of them running around, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah,
because the thing that really got me was like when the show first started, like you see the ship and it all like it drops out. If it's not in hyperspace, it's in an unusual one. It's a new one. And when you see the ship finally like lighting up, and then you see Thingy Mabob, the young lieutenant pop out, I was like, that was the best time to open up the show, because it's like it's new, we don't know where we are, everything, and then they go and slam the brakes on Lost style, and it's like, right, story time for backstory, and like, no, let the characters emerge naturally through talking to one another. You don't just slam the brakes and kind of go, right, backstory time for Eli. Whoop, 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 whoop. And it's like, oh, right, here we go again. You know?
Well, the main thrust of the story was Rush. So without Rush, the thing would fall apart. So the mystery behind what Rush was doing and why and how was, as soon as that was revealed, it's like, oh, now what? Like, now that he discovered the bridge, but he didn't tell anyone why. I still don't know exactly why. I think it's because he didn't want anyone up there yet, or he wasn't sure himself. He was doing experiments, but did he do that for a reason? Like, what was his mentality? And then when Eli figures that out, everyone freaks out. They don't know what to do with Rush. Do they throw him with wolves? Do they get rid of him? So the political side was always a secondary aspect, I thought, and that was an important glue that held the show together, because it is not a war story. It's not like Battlestar Galactica where you're trying to have a leader who can keep everyone together. This is like, we're trying to survive here. I don't know what the hell Rush is doing, but he's not helping us. He's doing his own thing.
Yeah. Or you're not sure whether he is influencing certain things, so he can gain certain things. Like, there was one where they sent the shuttle, like they were actually going towards the star, and they went and sent off that shuttle off by itself. I was like, okay, but to me that really set it up in the kinds of, these people have no idea. Like, the ship's been running around for millions of years. No one knows how it's refueled yet. Like, maybe you would go for the most common fuel source, perhaps, which would be a star. It's like, why aren't you guys looking at that? Oh no, it's all dramatic. It's that kind of.
Well, again, think about it. If you have enough technology to go into the surface of a star to harvest that amount of thermal energy, we're talking like ridiculous amounts of energy.
Yeah,
that to me would power you ridiculous distances, but it wouldn't have to be done rather soon. Like, it would take, like, okay, you do it once, you wait another 1,000 years or something. It wouldn't be like this every week event.
It's all these iPhone chargers, mate.
Expand his son, and you've been doing this for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and now you're here witnessing it the first time, and it's traveling between galaxies, doing all these other things, and then you just turn on the lights. It's not going to, like, oh, you're turning on the lights. Ooh, power drain. Like, no.
Well, the other thing is, go ahead, mate. Sorry, the thing about Stargate is that power is like, they had the the Z premiums, the 0-point modules, the mentions for bottles. Right. It's like they had one of those, and then you would bloody guarantee it in 2 episodes time where they would lose it. Like, the most powerful power source known to mankind, like, in the entire universe, and they would drain it in like minutes. It's like,
yeah, it's a little hard to grasp when you're literally have a dimension, a power source from an alternate dimension, and it's draining some. Like, I don't understand the concept behind it. Was when you think about it, it's like, okay, it's coming from another place, so you're just sucking in power, infinite amount of power from another area of space in another dimension. And you're like, okay, why would this drain? How would this drain? What's the problem? And then when they start turning on systems on Atlantis with this quasi battery engine thing, and you're draining it, you're like, oh, maybe we should fix things as opposed to just making this giant shield which just sucks up all the juice all the time. Maybe we should, like, power it down and power everything else down and do other things. But no, it was just the shield. The shield was sucking everything up, and like, oh, is this really the way you want to go with this story?
Another thing as well with the Wraith was that I just pitched this heads from SF Debris, where he was talking about, why don't the Wraith just go into, like, cloning if they have a food problem?
Yeah.
Like what was the problem with that? Oh, because they need to field the hunt. Like, bollocks.
Clone a bunch of hunters.
Yeah, clone a bunch of people, get them so they're a little bit armored up and a little bit more aggressive, whatever. Send them off into the wild, have fun with them. Off you go. Problem bloody solved.
Yeah.
Why do we need to think about that? It's like, why would they purposely have, like, you've got the Wraith that have to live off humans, but the humans are living in squalor, they're living in horrid conditions, they're probably diseased up to the backside, and yet you are feeding off of these people. You're not going to get your best crop value out of that. You're not going to put that on Sainsbury's. You know?
And they have these living ships. They have all this other organic technology.
Yeah.
It's like, can you not figure out how cloning? Like, these guys are super smart. Like, there was that one guy who escaped to Earth, and he was playing, I don't know, some betting game, or he was gambling.
That was in the alternate reality one. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
And he was just making crazy money just by looking at dice, and like, what the hell is going on with this? These guys are amazing. Why haven't they destroyed everything? Why haven't they conquered everyone? And why can't they become peaceful if they can just generate their own food source?
Just dumb. Episodes are dumb. And the character's their own worst enemy as well. You know, like there's one episode called Condemned where they actually met like the only advanced human, well, the second advanced human. It was the first advanced human species that they met. But because they basically got their prisoners off on an island, and the Wraith would obviously go to that island, so they had an agreement. And they were like, you can't have dealings with the Wraith, and they gave him a really good finger waggling. And then they made the prisoners escape. And then that new advanced civilization that they just met got wiped out pretty much. Oh, and then several episodes later, they went, oh, yeah, by the way, we're having a deal with the Wraith. We're not hypocrites on this, by the way, because we're doing it. That's fine, guys. It's absolutely fine. You're like, you people are the absolute worst. You are worse than the Wraith. You are actively destroying the only remaining advanced civilizations in this bloody galaxy. You're not compromising. You're not understanding. Like,
I think there's a lack of good sci-fi now that the Expanse is going away. I think there's Dark Mirror or Black Mirror. Is that a thing now? Is it still online? The Sci-fi. I'm trying to remember the names of all these places. Black Mirror. Yeah, it is. Okay. First air date was 2011. People are telling me to watch this. It's probably like a cooler or more sci-fi or space age version of The Outer Limits, I think. So
I remember that show, actually. That was pretty good. It's episodic things kind of go.
Yeah, it's all random, so it's kind of new stories every time. But the idea that people are throwing around in the chat is if what would you do with a Mass Effect series, a show? And I'm like, it could work. I'm not against it. I would love to see it, but you have to realize that TV and TV writing and video game writing are very different. And you'd have to sell the rights or give the rights to someone who could do TV writing and do TV drama and all the do a set, how to get a production cost going, get people going, get actors going. It's a huge production to do that. That's why I'm very, very skeptical of what they're going to do with the Witcher series, which is on Netflix, or they're going to eventually release on Netflix. Which just makes sense, like how crazy popular The Witcher is. And look how crazy popular Mass Effect is and other franchises. The Witcher makes more sense because it's simpler and there's less characters. And it makes, there's popularity with Game of Thrones and other medieval history pieces. So doing a little lights fantasy in your medieval world, no problem. But Mass Effect, that would be a huge undertaking. The sci-fi sets, the actors, the makeup,
it's a bit niche as well, though. To be fair,
science fiction, yes, you're right. Yeah.
Well, it's just the audience specifically for Mass Effect isn't actually as great. People say it's like really critically acclaimed and things like that. It's like you're only talking a couple of million people, really, whereas like Witcher is like tens of millions of people. Bit of a difference.
Yeah. Well, people have already been turned off by the Star Trek, whatever that is anymore. I don't even know what kind of show. I haven't watched it in months, so I can't tell you what they're doing with the characters, but it just turned me off. So trying to find new IPs that people will latch onto, especially in the science fiction genre, is pretty important because I haven't really seen anything aside from The Expanse that really caught my eye enough to say, okay, this is a series I want to watch next time. Like eventually shows die, like with what's the most popular show? It's NCIS on North America channel. It's been on for 15, 16 years, something ridiculous like that. It was old, like when Ziva left, which is at least 9 years ago.
Oh God.
Or 7, 8 years ago. I don't know. After that, after the characters are gone, you can't just reintroduce characters and think everything's going to go the way it should. You watch these shows because of the characters. You don't watch them because of the setting. The setting of NCIS is now. You're watching a bunch of people in an office hunt down bad guys. It's a police procedural, like whoop-de-doo. So, which is interesting because I talk about police procedurals in other capacities, and lots of shows are getting canceled, but Elementary got renewed, which is just another take on the Sherlock Holmes motif. So that's doing it well. It's doing it not too creatively, but they're doing a spin on it, which works. And I'm glad they are, because the BBC version just it started off high and then just dropped like you would not believe. So that was pretty sad. And as good as Benedict is, the writing is not there. And they just dropped the ball so many times. Even the fans of Sherlock go, this is not Sherlock. Sherlock would not do this. This is too crazy. This is not what I want to watch anymore.
Yeah.
But Sherlock on Elementary is Sherlock. He's his own version of Sherlock, but it feels like there's just enough genius and just enough creativity in having a one of those mental geniuses running around and solving things. So that's what you want to do when you do a science fiction series. You have to get the source material right. And as much as I like to see it, I can't see it being right. What's going to happen is some guy from FX or some guy from props are like, well, why don't we have a gun like this? And da-da-da. And the producer's going to go, yeah, it's awesome. And the creative consultant's like, what are you doing? I quit. Da-da-da. Yeah. So that's going to happen a lot because there's so much design already. And we already know what happens with fan versions of Mass Effect.
Didn't they do that other one called, was it Red Stand or something like that?
Yeah, that was a fan. They took Mark Meer and they told about a story on Mars. It was like a 15, 20-minute thing, I think. No, it was more than that. I think it was more than that.
It was like a short mini-series, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. It was simple. It wasn't like obviously the budget wasn't there, so that's fine. But
yeah,
it was just it didn't have to be a Mass Effect story, which is good. It could have been something else, but they got Mark Meer. They used I don't know how they got the rights from Bioware. Hey, can we do a $20,000 Mass Effect thing with Mark Meer?
That was about the Prothean archives, wasn't it? That they were.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember the plot, but get Mark Meer. Sure, he'll do it. Why not? He loves this stuff. You could have made him an alien female table dancer, and Mark Meer would have done it.
He does a lot of stage, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's an improv actor, so yeah, he does a lot of stage work, lots of comedy.
Yeah, fair enough. Good for him, actually.
Yeah, he's awesome. Well, there's lots of great comedians that no one knows about because they're just not on TV. And
yeah, I do know because of like Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's my introduction to new people. Oh God, Colin Mockery and just Ryan Stiles. Yeah,
we have some comedy troupes that are on TV, like This Hour Has 22 Minutes and the old Royal Canadian Air Farce, but they've gone the way of YouTube, sort of, but it's not as popular, and that's fine because Canadian politics is still a joke, and
that is the comedy.
You can't make a farce of a farce. Really, it doesn't work. So all you got to do is watch our C-SPAN. It's like, oh, what is just like? There's literally 3 people in Canadian politics. As soon as they open their mouth, you're like, are you serious? It's the environment minister, the economy guy, and Justin. And you just sit there and you're just like, oh God. Can you answer? Like, it's so, I don't know how it is in Australia. I'm not sure how the system is in UK, but when you ask a question, you expect a reasonable answer, not a reiteration of what you just said. So yeah, it's pretty sad in Canada right now these days.
Every time I think of Canada, I always think of the South Park Canadians.
Oh joy!
Yeah, French Canada, like, it's all different.
It's like, hey, let's speak French now, because that's what we do in our parliament system. We actually decide to answer in French, and then we swap to English, and then if you're being really fancy, you'll say something in French, and then you'll say it again in English. You know? And then you'll have the French Quebec MPs complain that you're not speaking enough French. Oh shit! Oh my god! Yeah, we're wonderful. We're a great country.
It was a bit of a deviation, wasn't it?
Politics. I hate politics. It always pops up. Even if I have it on my channel, I talk about it just for the sake of getting out of my system. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, though, is that when politics are so infused into the things that we want to try and escape, the very things that we're trying to escape from, they're trying to inject it into our own escapism. So there's nothing wrong with politics in games. It's just don't make it so parallel, as in like it's a flipping window.
Yeah. when you have that ridiculous thing with not the FCC, but the Senate vote against net neutrality in the States, it's like whoop-de-doo. But let's say it passes in the lower house. Again, whoop-de-doo. Nothing's going to change. Now, ISPs will no longer be able to offer what they were no longer being able to offer post 2015. Wow. Is your plan going to get any better? No. Are you going to get better coverage? No. Are new ISPs going to pop up more frequently? No. Nothing's going to change. It's just people are going lunatic crazy over this shit in the States, and they don't understand what the hell they're talking about. I could put it, if no one understands it, it's fine. You don't have to. It's very technical. But let me put it in a simple way that is very easy to grasp and is fairly accurate, okay? So let's say you own a highway, okay? If you own a highway, you want to be able to control when to repair it, when to take lanes out and call in the crews, and when to expand it, and who to charge and how much to charge. That's your right because you own the damn highway. That's that, okay? Let's say you're a freight company, so you want to ship things on highways. And you have a fleet of trucks, you got to pay the workers, you got to pay the tires, you got to spend all this money, right? Well, you want to say, wait a second, this is costing me too much money to move freight around. Let me petition to the government so that the people who make the highways, they have to pay their own way for me, or they got to pay my way so I can go on any of their highways anytime I want. I don't want to pay as many strong tolls, or maybe no tolls. And I want to throw my trucks down these highways as much as I want because I want to expand my business, and the highways are really slowing me down. That's pretty much the problem, or that's net neutrality, is the government telling the people, the ISPs, that you can't do things your way. That's it. Now, there are pros and cons against this and what it means, but you either have the freedom to own your property and control it any way you want and offer services and products to your people any way you want, or you don't. And that's as simple as it gets. And the problems that we had that came up naturally from the internet from 2001 to 2014 were solved within weeks, if not 3 months. And that's the whole Netflix fiasco of people not getting their streaming broadband connection. That's it. So, and people don't understand that. They think it's the evil ISPs that, they want to control the internet when they can't, because the ISPs aren't the highway. The ISPs are an off-ramp and on-ramp to the highway. And the highway is never going to change. You cannot dismantle it. Well, you can try, but it'll take you a long time. and there's more main node points popping up throughout the world, not just in the States, because back in the early 2000s, there was only 4 main node points, and 3 of them were in US, and then there's the other one I think was in China, or I can't remember the other place. But now there's a whole bunch now, and you can make your own off ramp, on ramp, no problem. People are building the backbone, which is the high speed superhighway that connects everything together. Already they're buying shares in that, so that's not going away. And regulating the internet's not going to happen. It's not going to stop anything. And if it does come to a point where regulation becomes so bad, people are going to do their own ISPs. They're going to be black market ISPs, and you're going to be able to download And that already exists. There's been black market phone lines for the past 50, 60 years. There's devices. I have friends of friends who have products you can buy, little black boxes that you can get infinite unlimited calling, unlimited data from standard local digital signals that modulate and demodulate signals from analog to digital. So these technologies exist, and it's just the proprietary old Ma Bell system. You want to talk about the States, or the Bell system in Canada, that are slowing that technology down. So any kind of regulations, any kind of incumbent organizations are just there to stop innovation, and that's what happened with Google. Google wants to lay down fiber. They're still trying, but they've been stopped. They've been slowed down by the Ma Bell system in many cities. So what they had to do is innovate again. So they created the Project Loon. And Project Loon, in case you don't know, is they have these giant balloons that work with wind currents throughout, I think, South America. I think they've been doing it mostly. That give people cheap internet wirelessly. So, and they're going to be doing other things like putting up smaller satellites or their own towers or what have you, because they can't get the rights to lay down their own copper or fiber because of the old regulations on other phone companies. So yeah, that's pretty much the issues in America, at least, regarding net neutrality, which is a non-issue, of course. So I'm kind of tired of talking about it, honestly.
Yeah.
I see it every year. There's SOPA, there was PIPA, there was all this other bullshit. And you're like, oh, come on, give it a rest.
Should we end with was it Carl Moriarty's video?
Oh God, I posted a few comments on Colin Moriarty's video. And there was some I don't know, some guy defending him and attacking me, and I'm like, do I care what this guy has to say? The guy just wants to argue for the sake of arguing, and I'm like, I don't care. It's Colin Moriarty. Come on, guys.
I know. I can understand this sentiment in the world, in this day and age of Twitter hacktivism, of just complaining just because they're perpetually offended by it, for the whole, how many times, they obviously got some kind of chart whereby how many times have I been offended today? Let's see if we can try and break the marker from yesterday or whatever. But when he talks about the subject specifically about Mass Effect, Mass Effect 3's ending, he's like, he just doesn't get it still. He doesn't understand that the plot has been completely changed. Mass Effect 2 had, when he talks about the vision, it's like, well, Mass Effect had no vision.
Yeah.
Because Mass Effect 2 has nothing to do with 1, and Mass Effect 3 has nothing to do with Mass Effect 2. It's like, they're completely independent games.
Well, that's the content argument. He was trying to tell us that he didn't really pay attention, and he was partially sorry for what he said. But when he actually watched his original video, he was a giant douche. Yeah. He was just saying, your opinion doesn't matter.
You're entitled.
Yeah, you are entitled. You are entitled. You should not be entitled to whatever you want, even though that's what you sold us on, even though that is what we bought and we didn't get it. And when you get a product that was advertised a certain, he actually said that people went to court. The Better Business Bureau took these people to court, and of course the case was dropped. But this is how serious it was. When you have millions of people saying, yeah, something is really wrong here, then you have to look at why that is. And Colin still does not get it. He didn't. It's bizarre how if you're a journalist, you read and write. And if you are able to read and write, you should be able to understand what someone is reading, or what you're reading and what you're writing. And for him to totally miss that and say, oh, yeah, I didn't understand it. Maybe he's trying to protect himself. Maybe he's trying to save his own face, saying, okay, yeah, maybe I wasn't completely accurate, but I still stand by what I was trying to say. And if all he's trying to say is, yeah, the artist has a right to say what they want, yeah, you're totally right. Everyone has the right to say what they want, the same way every consumer has the right to complain for whatever reason. Obviously, some reasons are better than others, But when you have so many people going, yeah, something's wrong here, we can't tell you what because we're not the writer, we're not, I don't know, we're not an English major, but anyone can tell you there's something wrong with that ending. It didn't feel right. It did not look right. It didn't sound right. The character came out of nowhere. This magical crap started happening. Things started blowing up on a galactic level. Blah 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 blah. You know, more questions than answers, which you don't do at endings. You can raise a question at an ending if it's clear and precise. That's great, but not when you open up a thousand other cans of worms. So,
yeah, I just think it just doesn't really. Like when you start using, I think you just use a bad example, you know. And like I said, if Mass Effect actually had a vision, if it actually had an intake, because it's like if you have a vision, that means that you usually have one guy. Let's say Drew Kasperian. I probably butchered that name, but you know, he was the guy who basically wrote it. You know, him and Casey pretty much, and then Mac Walters took over. It's like, well, now the vision's changed, the narrative's changed. It's changed. The vision is gone. Let's also completely forget that the catalyst was originally Javik, and they just took him out and made him day one DLC. Oh right, brilliant. We've just completely changed the story. The most instrumental character that we could put into the story for Mass Effect 3, we're going to make day one DLC. Thanks for that.
Yeah, similar to your comment about the Stargate universe, how they or the Stargate franchise, how they had to make increasingly stronger aliens. Why? It was just damage control after the game came out. So the first DLC, I think it was the extended cut, right?
Yes.
And then it was Leviathan. And Leviathan, all it is just another backstory, which
that you said that they weren't going to do.
That doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's like oh, you didn't invent a giant walking mortuary of a species cybernetically. You're actually a squid creature that is telepathic, and somehow you made them cyber. Like what? Why? Why would you do it? I was programmed to do that. Like what? Okay, so wouldn't the super genius, massive squid species that span the galaxy crush you like a bug at the first sign of rebellion? Would it have that ability? I mean, it's not like it was the Geth, which were really small and tiny, and you didn't know what to happen, and they ended up replicating like crazy. But these are giant monsters that span the galaxy that can mind control you, and they couldn't just squish them under one of their tentacles. No, they have to go into hiding because they're too strong.
Oh, look at that. These guys are making synthetics. Let's just launch an asteroid at the planet, just to teach them a lesson. Problem solved, guys.
And we're going to be in hiding forever. We're just forever. We're just chilling.
And we've got the technology to just instantly take out Reapers. We're not going to do anything else. We're just going to hide it. Like, what? Go to the Citadel, place those balls around and start killing things.
Let's think about it even further. Let's say the Reapers do their thing. Leviathans took over some human thralls. So what? They're going to just keep these thralls and they're eventually going to die, or they're going to make more. So they're going to have this army of humans who are either cloned or whatever, which means that the humans in some capacity survive the reaping. And then they're going to be their servants. And then what? Oh, we have to cull their numbers so the darkness cannot be breached, or whatever the hell their tagline was. So they're going to have these human slaves just constantly living for 50,000 years as far as it goes. And what? So did they enslave anyone else over the years? Just the humans? Just this 50,000 latest years? Did they have any other slaves they had? Like what? All these other questions pop up. Like, okay, you can't just start opening up this big ass can of worms to explain another big ass can of worms. That's not how you do it.
It's turtles all the way down. That's the methodology of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that Norse mythology, or was that?
Was it Russian?
The turtle on its back, supporting the universe or the galaxy or the world, and
unless you're thinking of Discworld, obviously. But
okay, yeah, okay.
But there's like an old ancient like thing from whereby it's like, well, it's that kind of who created God kind of thing, and it's just
infinite
just
regrets,
keep on
right.
going,
Yeah, infinite regrets.
just turtles. Yeah. So yeah, it's still amazing. I mean, I think on a technical level, I mean, they only had an 18-month development cycle for Mass Effect 3, and half of the people were actually working on Mass Effect 2's DLC, and a quarter of them were working on Dragon Age 2 to get that pushed out. So I think from a technical level, it's amazing that they managed to push out anything.
Okay. All right. I see.
Because Racefic did a video on it on Mass Effect 3, and you actually kind of go, you know what? Fair play to the developers, the actual grunts. They did a really, really good job for what they had. It's just a shame that the story was in constant flux for like the first 8 months or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
you could have written the story out in about 2 weeks tops.
Yeah, it's like, and they're still like changing characters. Like I remember there's a thread on GameFAQs called BioWare's Lies, and it's just all of these. I'll give you a link to it, actually. Just all of these things of like BioWare. They were imagining this completely different game, and that's what a lot of people got pissed off on, was that we were lied to. It wasn't that the ending wasn't what we expected. It's just that we were lied to. That's the plain and simple of it. We were lied. That's it. There's no artistic vision or anything like that, because because there's a big difference between artistic vision and then there's purchasable entertainment media. Guess which one BioWare is? Yeah, it's the latter. They just need to get their thick heads through that. And was it investigative journalism basically says that, because these people don't understand what art actually is, or what game art is, they just huddle around these things, just kind of go, this art because it is art, we've demanded it so. Like Bastion, that's art. Why? Because we've said it is. It's art. It's like, no, you can't just, no, it doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's all very hoo-hardy.
Well, I hope there is something new on the science fiction universe or the future, because we don't really have anything to entertain ourselves with. We're always on the cusp of doing our own thing, at least in a creative sense for writing, not necessarily starting a project.
I keep running out of crayons.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can only use red, green, and blue.
Yeah, I'd rather just do my own thing. I'm eventually going to do probably like an Amazon download book for just on writing in general, because it's as if people aren't getting it, or I know the TV writers get it because they're obviously doing something successful, whether you like it or not as a material, but apparently the plots and stories have been good. For some reason, video games are they're too big, they're too complex, there's too many moving parts, and they forget what makes a compelling story and why we even care to play an RPG, or why we care about the fantasy genre as opposed to the contemporary genre or the romance genre or whatever fictional medium we like. So if we're not getting the basics done, that means people have stopped reading. People have stopped reading good stories and say, hey, I'm inspired by what Neil Gaiman just wrote, or I'm inspired by Terry Brooks, or I'm inspired by any comic that, and I don't want to do what they've done. I want to do something new. That's one of the main reasons people become artists, is they see what others have done. They go, wow, look at that. I wish I could do that, but I wouldn't want to do it that way because I'm my own person. I have my own ideas. So, unless there's any questions you guys want, let me just check the chat right now. I think we've been going on almost 2 hours here. So, have I ever played the Ace Attorney series? I believe I've played the first one, and that was on the NDS, I think. It was okay. It was fun. I wouldn't say the writing was fantastic. When you do any sort of trial stories or any kind of detective stories, you have to really know what you're doing. So already that's a step above all the other genres I know. So they did it competently. Was it great? No, because to do it greatly, you have to do complex. You have to do twists and turns that you're not expecting. And it's kind of hard to do that when you're trying to dumb it down. So for the audience, I thought it was fine. So the concept behind it worked very well. Let's see. We need more science fiction games. I agree. It's a shame that studios never. Yeah, we have good writers. The problem, I don't think, is the writing. I think the writing goes secondhand to the game development, and the developer is the guy who calls the shots, as opposed to the developer saying, "Okay, I'll wait my turn. Let the point of the story come out, and let me build a game around that." So it's usually the what happens in production sort of circumvents everything else. How do you enjoy the lack of plot in Pillars of Eternity 2? Wow, did I ever enjoy the lack of plot? I was too busy Vanguard charging as my monk my first playthrough. Because when you're a monk, people explode. Actually, when you're anyone, people explode. Like you have a knife, you stab someone, they explode. But as a monk, you just have like super powerful blows, and you could make people go prone. You can make people get knocked up in the air. You can knock them back. You can you can blast right through everyone like you're like a rocket. And one of your final moves is you just hit everyone on the screen. You just go boom, 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 like you're a pinball. So the gameplay is really what I got through. But honestly, I really like the setting and I really like the music. So that's how I got through the game. Like I was just playing today. I found that vampire island village and I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Or sorry, not vampire, fampire. It's with an F. You gotta be very careful. Any current sci-fi series you recommend? Just The Expanse. Yeah, it's great. It has Shirelu Aghdashloo, which is Admiral Shalaran from Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect 2. Great actor. She's still hot and she's got it. She's hot as an old lady, and she's got that crazy smoker's cough or smoker's voice cough. And yeah, love that. And it had a few episodes of Elias Defexis, who is, of course, Adam Jensen, which is the game I'm going through right now. Alpha Protocol analysis when? God damn it. Every time someone asks me that. Every time someone asks me, I really want to do that. And I'm like, oh, life, other analysis, other games. I really just have to stop playing games. That's it. I'll just stop playing the games. I'll just watch YouTube videos. And I'll just comment on those. That's pretty much all I can do at this point, if I want to do everything. So
you're doing like a David Attenborough kind of way, National Geographic.
And here we have the intrepid gamer, and he's going through his real time with pause experience. Oh, he's paused the game, and he's summoning it. Yeah, no, I can't do that.
Here we have Ploticus Holicus.
Assassin's Creed, I'm never going to touch those as much as I like the concept behind them. I think the execution is very bad, very poor. Game company directors who know how to work with writers. Yes, that's true. That's very difficult. That's why I always like when Deus Ex came out, Mary DeMarle, I say, wow, she is in there. She's having interviews with JJB. She's having interviews with Francois, whatever his name is, Dugas. Who's the producer? So they're all like those are the three main seats, and she's up there. So that's why I really like that studio, even though I'm scared of what I'm going. I'm seeing some things happening in Mankind Divided that I just oh no, and then like it started off so well. And you're like no, you're going up a hill. It's like oh, it's beautiful. Like no. So yeah. Subpar, yep. That's Pillars of Eternity made me fall asleep. Some games where you just stay up all night playing. The Pillars of Eternity, it's like, it's 10 o'clock, time to go to bed. Yeah. Not enough.
Jade Empire.
I haven't touched Jade Empire yet.
Oh, someone saying, what do you think of Jade Empire?
From what I saw, it looks okay. I'm not talking about graphics or gameplay. I'm just talking about the story. Silent protagonist, very, very KOTOR-ish, very KOTOR. So to tie that into with Eastern philosophy and martial arts, great premise. The execution looks okay.
Casey was behind that, wasn't he?
I wouldn't doubt it. He was behind Kotor, so yeah.
Yeah, because it's when Mass Effect was being made. I think it was when Bioware joined up with Pandemic Studios.
Oh, right.
So yeah.
Which is a story that builds from a good premise, or a story starts with a good premise and evolves later? The good premise makes a story easier to write because you're not shooting yourself you're not putting roadblocks in front of your work. So with a good premise, you can then write a good story. When you're talking about a generic premise, and let's be honest, every premise is fairly generic anyway. There's really nothing original in storytelling, and it evolves later. What you're saying is that you have the understanding of what storytelling should do, so that you have a character and you have plots that alter. So you're not just thinking in terms of a premise, you're thinking in terms of the ending first. So what that means is that the person who sat down, he says, well, I want to do a story about this. And whether he's thought of the ending first or the premise first makes no difference. The thing is that the second part of his task was he decided to connect those two together. So he eventually wrote the ending second or first, doesn't matter which. And that's what all that means. So when I looked at I had to do those two videos because the first one was just me bashing Pillars of Eternity 2's premise, because it's like, geez, you're telling me a Godzilla story on an archipelago. Wow. Okay, so imagine this: you have a series of Japans, they're all lined up, and Godzilla just starts smashing Japan 1, and then he's just smashing through Japan 2. So how are you going to tell this story? Like, what is your what's your solution? What's your end game? What is your hero going to do? Is he going to climb up Godzilla and stab him in the neck? Like what? And as you go through Pillars of Eternity 2, as I said in the beginning of this live stream, nothing happens. Like you say, the gods come to you. Can you talk to our wayward son? And you're like, okay. And then they talk to you again. You haven't talked to me. Can you go talk to him? It's like, okay. It's like, oh, you've talked to him. What do you say? Nothing. Can you talk to him again? Okay. Like that's happening at every plot point. And you're like, is there a point to this story? Why am I here? Why didn't the gods go talk to their wayward son? Why didn't the gods appoint someone else? Why didn't the gods appoint everyone? They can do anything. But they apparently can't figure out what another god is thinking. And that's all they wanted to do. What is that god doing? Oh, he wants to blow up the world. Okay, great. Woo. It's just, and it's so immaterial because you can't do anything about it. But you can ride in a pirate ship and go kill pirates and vampires and ogres and yeah, it's a pirate adventure. So I understood why they also moved in. Okay, I'm just reading through comments here.
Not enough underwater levels in Koto 1. Classic.
Any hopes for Anthem? Of course there's hopes for Anthem. I mean, it does look good, but because it's a multiplayer online thing, that kind of cuts half of my expectations down to...
I don't know how they're going to do the story. It's like cutscene heavy, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the only way they could really do it. Because the only time when the Bioware did the investment of characters' influence, multiple characters' influence in the story is... a store where even then it was just an input. It was
there's no real good example I can think of that multiplayer is going to have effective storytelling. Like the best we can look at it, I guess, is World of Warcraft. I guess
you're just going to have a story and you're just going to be plodding around in it, and you're going to have a cutscene at every ending. Like, okay.
Yeah, the other thing I guess you can look at is what happened with the Old Republic, which apparently has gotten better with age. So they do include more plot lines or plot threads with your class. That's one way to do it. But I don't know how it's going to... I've never played those games. I played World of Warcraft back in the day for like 20 minutes. I was like, ooh, this is not my thing. So it's possible, but I really can't see it being... Because that's an example of a game being more important than story. And once you have a game mechanic that's more important than a storytelling element, then you're going to get subpar story. You're just always going to get that. So that's what's going to happen with Anthem, essentially, unless they have some weird tie-in where it's like single player and then you jump to multiplayer and then you jump to single player. That is really going to alienate a lot of fans if that's what they do, because some people don't want a multiplayer, don't have multiplayer, they don't have downloads capacity. So who knows? All right, what did you think of Original Sin 2? I loved it. Loved the game. Didn't play the first one, but I backed the second one because I looked at the first one, I was like, ew, this is not really my thing. But the second one had the history of coming out, because I hate when Kickstarter projects don't come out on the time they do. And the first one wasn't that late. It was okay. It was fairly well received. They had the right team, the right people, the right attitude, and they've proven themselves. So that's why I backed it. And fantastic game. Beautifully done. Even though it's not my thing, even though I don't really like the turn-based style, the level of detail and the exploration was right on. So it felt like a real time with pause, even though it was turn-based. And of course, I just gave everyone crossbows because you can customize all your units. So I felt like I was doing medieval XCOM. So main characters, Pillars of Eternity and Jade Empire can both talk to ghosts, yet Jade Empire is built around that, it seems. Oh, cool. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So basically, you're the Watcher in Jade Empire. All right. What do we got here? Ken Levine's narrative Legos. I didn't read that. I think someone sent me the article, and I was just reading it. And I went, nope, not for me. Ken Levine's an interesting guy. I don't think he's dumb. I just think he's weird. So maybe he's got something in his brain that we don't understand. And if that's just an analogy, great. But if he's actually thinking of using Legos and building a pyramid or a robot out of Legos, I don't know. Sounds a bit weird. Was Avalon the linchpin in Obsidian then? No, I don't think so at all. I think he was a major player because there was 3 or 4 major 3 or 4 owners of Obsidian, and Avalon had stock in that, and it was a minor, like he was the smallest contributor, I think. And he wanted say in a lot of creative elements, which is a great idea because it's Avalon, and that's what he likes doing. So of course he would do that. And there was a lot of politics and a lot of argumentation around his contracts and what he was doing and what he could and couldn't do, as well as some of the benefits surrounding his contract with his family members and what he can get out of it and what monies and what have you. So it was more of a business problem than it was a creative thing. And I don't know if Avalon works well in that capacity. I just know where he works really well. That's when he has full control. So if he's in control of a project, great. If he's in control of multiple projects, probably not so much. And I don't care a thing for, the third version of it's coming out from Obsidian's Westworld or Wasteworld or Wasteworld, right? No, it's a post-apocalyptic thing. I don't even know. Never liked it too much. So the idea of talking to ghosts worked well in Jade Empire. Yeah, okay. It's silly. Does Destiny 2, whether good in quality or not, has a plot that goes from A to B that you do before you reach the never-ending multiplayer postgame? Interesting. I'm not familiar too often with the Destiny 2, but the comparison is very similar. Thoughts on Nier Automata? One of my patrons actually mentioned I should check out the first and second game because of the popularity of the second. So if I have time, I might get around to it. I think that's everything. Are you interested in State of Decay 2? Actually, I am. That is the one zombie survival game that I am interested in more than Days End, or what is that? Days Gone, more than that.
Oh, Days Gone By.
It's taking so long to come out. I was like, oh, at the time, I was like, oh, that's cool. Now it's like, Whatever. See these same game over and over again in demos or video demos. You're like, give me a break already. Da-da-da-da.
Someone said, what do you think of the science fiction mixed in with fantasy a la Shadowrun?
Well, it depends on how it's done. And Shadowrun's a very good example of doing it right, at least Dragonfall, because, and this is obvious, the characters were done well. And compare that to Hong Kong, the characters were interesting, but they weren't dramatically interesting. They weren't worthwhile in that sense. Most of the characters don't have anything to do with the plot anyway, but because the game mechanic matched the backstory of one of the characters, in case I think her name was Glory, where if you jack yourself into too much tech, you actually end up taking up part of your soul. And she did that because, this is a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't played Dragonfall, is because she was being pursued by a demon to take her soul away, so she started getting rid of her soul by giving herself cybernetic implants as far as she could. And she was to escape her past, and she had all this backstory. And that little element was, even though unrelated to the plot, was just enough to say, hey, they're doing something interesting with the gameplay or the game mechanic and tying it into a character, which is not a very good example of plot. But if you look at the other characters, one of them was the best friend of the person who died for you, who was the leader of the team. The other one was one of the best, other best friend, who was the magic guy. Combined with that, with the setting, I think it was Germany, some area of, was it Germany or Vienna? I don't remember. But anyway, the setting worked, and the rules of Shadowrun were made more colorful, more simple, so you can create characters and they could all work within your team. So it had a strong emphasis on RPG, not too much on character, but you cared about the setting. You cared about what the dragons were up to and why. And it was a game about adventure and exploration, and with turn-based combat. So it kind of reminded me of that. It was a Steam game, of a spy game, turn-based, where you're just a spy and you're trying to hack into, you're trying to do espionage on other companies. And I never got a chance to play it, but it had that vibe, but with much more cool stuff, like just cool, like your bartender could be a dragon, or your people with the ogres running around, and they're domesticated and they're civilized, and things like that, which do a colorful spin. Like it's about time we have a fantasy sci-fi game, because you read comic books all the time. Oh, there's ogres, there's creatures from hell, there's all these other silly tropes. But if you give it some sophisticated adult themes, it's cool. Like, ever see the movie Hellboy or the Hellboy series? Those are entertaining movies. They don't get critical acclaim because their stories are great. It's because their storytelling is great, because the characters are interesting and colorful, and you're in this space opera-ish world. And that's what it is. Space opera is primarily, just like Mass Effect, is primarily a spectacle. And if the spectacle is done right, that involves the story. You can't just have, explosions. You can't just have flashy neon lights like the City of a Thousand Suns, or whatever that French thing was.
Oh, Valerian?
Valerian, right. There are wrong ways to do spectacles. So, Michael Bay, he knows how to do spectacles of a certain genre, of a certain style. So within that capacity, I would say it's done very well, at least in Dragonfall. Hong Kong was okay. It's not fantastic. Like, you need that personal element. Once you have all the setting figured out, you need the character. You need that personal connection. If you don't have that, it becomes generic. It becomes forgettable, really. What else we got going here? Wasteland. Sorry, yeah, that was the game. Wasteland 1 and 2. I wasn't too fond of. Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Those look like hardcore games, and the reason why you buy Like that's what you would buy in a package deal if you're getting a PlayStation or an Xbox or whatever. I would think, like, just me personally. Do you min-max in RPGs, or do you build your character with actual role-playing? I'm not a hardcore role-playing, but I do min-max. Because when I went through my my monk build in Pillars of Eternity, I wanted to go DPS build. So I had to min-max. And it becomes a point where you don't need any other units. You just have your monk, and he destroys everything. Like there's a lot of once you get at a certain level, like past halfway, I don't know about the Iron Man difficulty. I'm about, I think, on veteran. You just destroy entire teams, and it's just ridiculous. So there's obviously some, I don't know if they designed it that way or they didn't do any testing to balance it out, but it's broken. You're like, almost every class is like that. You could make a summoning class where you just stand there and your minions, you can summon so many things. And then I'm like, this is why they cut out the 6th player, because with a 5-man team, you have way more than enough to beat anything. And if you have one summoner, just like skeletons, worms, or wyverns, then wisps, like you already have like 10 units, plus your 4 other units which could also summon. So yeah, it's pretty broken as it is right now. So I don't know if they're going to update it. I don't think you were an action game fan, but did you play something like Devil May Cry? I did play the Devil May Cry series. I played the first one because I'm a big fan of Castlevania, or Symphony of the Night at least. I have Castlevania 3. I played some Game Boy games back in the day. Some of the 3.2D, the 2D 2.5 genre games, if you can call it that. It's basically side-scrolling with 3D art. So I'm a big fan of those style of games, just because that's all. They're just pure gameplay. That's why you play them. It's adventure exploration, finding hidden things, very simple gameplay. So when you saw Devil May Cry, you're like, oh, there's something totally within that genre, but in the 3D world. It's all medieval. It's all silly. It's a bit over the top, I would say. That's why I didn't like it too much. So I did play the first one. The second one, I immediately spat out of my PS2. Does it look like you were dancing in the air, and it was just silly? And I think I played was it the third one? Yeah, it was the third one where you were with Virgil. That was a very, like, Capcom did a very good game, or did a very good production of producing that game, because everything was polished to immaculate sheen. They had all these stances, lots of what I like to call non-QuickTime events, because it's part of the game system, even though it actually had QuickTime events in the game. I never got into 4, or I never bothered with it. I just, 3 I thought was as good as it got for me, and I was pretty happy with it. And the story, just don't even care. It's just you're magical demon guy with a sword. Okay, cool. Kill things. Let's see what else we got here. Are you interested in Rage 2? No, I'm not. If Anthem had at least a skeleton of a story, I could do a post-mortem, because I know it's going to flop. Lori's story did fit. Okay, yeah. I don't know. I just connected with. I thought she was always the mysterious characters. Like, okay, why are they mysterious? Why? You want to find out, and they reveal slowly to you. It's like, oh, your soul's in danger. That's not good. And you try to protect yourself by getting rid of it, by cutting yourself into pieces and all this other stuff. Plus, she was one of the unique units that she was melee, and she had her claws, and you kept upgrading her. And it's one of those units you keep using. So it's a gameplay thing. It's more of it is more of a gameplay thing than it is a plot related thing. Breath of the Wild. Yeah. I've never, again, Breath of the Wild was like the God of War. It's like, oh, it's the game of a generation. It's this and that. It's a masterpiece. It's like, okay, fine. What is it? It's open world Zelda. Okay, wow. You know, and I'm not saying it's not a bad game. It looks great. Does it appeal to me? Not so much. Zelda is not really role playing. It's action adventure Nintendo. It's before they could do proper action adventure fantasy stories, when the best they had at the time was Mario Brothers. And someone decided to make an adventure with side-scrolling top-down views. Yeah, that's about it. Anything else? Anything else we got? Any other questions? Any Nintendo games that you're interested in? Any other things in E3 I missed? Because there's nothing at E3 I care about. XCOM 2 may get another expansion. Your thoughts on this and what you liked about XCOM 2? Well, first off, without the expansion of the hero, what is it called? Oh, geez, I still have it on my drive. XCOM 2 DLC, War of the Chosen. That's what it is. Like, you can't play XCOM 2 without War of the Chosen. It's just pointless. Like, that really makes the game a higher level of game, because there are characters, there are villains to go after. They talk to you, they taunt you, they come after you, and you could lose the game. That's brilliant. They make a sub-boss kill you. That's great. So, yeah, I think it's fantastic. And you know what? It's such a beloved franchise that even the expansions, like the Long War, they're making their own flavor of XCOM. They've started their own studio. So it is a beloved franchise, and I wish they'd go back to its roots. But for what it is, it's good. They know what they're doing. And yeah, I would love to see another expansion if it's on the same level of quality, which is really hard to top, because War of the Chosen was fantastic. I could revive a dead game series. Which would it be? Obviously, Planescape. What else we got? Dark Souls. I haven't played Dark Souls, but looks fantastic. Gameplay looks great. Storytelling looks tight. Not sure about the giant creatures that you fight. Like, seems like you're in the wrong genre, because the genre with big creatures where you could take a hit and keep going, whereas Dark Souls is like you're dead. And that's it. Soul Reaver. There's a great franchise I'll miss.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic franchise. Great writing. Great voice acting. Simon Templeton. Fantastic dude. Would you like to see Mass Effect being given to another developer? Yes, I would. Just give it to Chris Avellone. In fact, that's my answer to everything. Give it to Chris Avellone. Give him a boatload of money and give him the license. That's it. Is 2018 a bad year for video games? I don't think it's a bad year, because Fortnite's becoming its own thing. And I remember before Fortnite came around, there was PUBG. And that was the big thing for like 3 months. No, not even, maybe 2 months. Has it been that long? I can't remember how long it's been since PUBG was the big thing. And then Fortnite came by and just streamlined everything and killed it.
Yeah, it's all stacking on top of the dead of the other, isn't it? With those Battle Royale modes.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, someone mentioned Alpha Centauri. Yes, that's my second favorite game. So would I like to see a sequel? Of course. Of course I would. But I don't think it's dead, because it's basically just a space 4X game. And whatever that Sid Meier's space thing that came out a few years ago was nonsense. So maybe you could say it's dancing on its grave, but it's not dead. I wouldn't go that far. What I consider Dark Souls looks tight. What story? Okay, you know what? I don't know a thing about Dark Souls, aside from there's a fire and you have to rekindle it. But from what I've seen in cutscenes, it seems like it coincides with the gameplay. So as you progress, boom, it tells you. So it's an adventure. It builds upon itself. Whether that's good is subjective, but what the method they use is good, is tight to me. When you consider JRPGs RPGs, since there isn't actual role playing, yeah, you're still playing a role, not in the classic Western sense or D&D sense or pen and paper sense. but you're min-maxing. You are playing a role. You're customizing characters. There are plot threads. There are sub-quests or sub-bosses that you fight, and they have their own stories. So yeah, they're definitely RPGs. Like Final Fantasy Tactics is a tactical Japanese role-playing game, but it's still a role-playing game, even though it's a linear story. Okay, what else we got? I think that's about it. My top 3 favorite games. That's a good question. It's Planescape, Alpha Centauri, and then the top 3 are broken down into 3 others just because of experiences. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Fallout 2, which is my favorite PC game of all time. Not my favorite game of all time. So I always put that high. And what's the other one I really love? Final Fantasy Tactics, I would say. I think those 3, they always share the top 3 spot. Any thoughts on Kingdom Hearts series? No, none at all. Yes, I've played the original Ace Combat. That's fun. That's just fun gameplay. It's simple. You have missiles and you have a machine gun. That's it. You get your YF-25s and you're just destroying everyone. You're bombing. You're dogfighting. It's great. I don't know a damn thing about any of the simulators now. I don't know what's out there these days. I did hear that 7 was the peak, but I haven't touched it, so I can't tell you. Class-based shooters, say it's Royal Battle Royale shooters, the first Unreal tournament, and more variety in gameplay. Yes, well,
yeah,
yeah,
that's true. I was going to say we're on a twist, aren't we, in terms of first-person shooters, whereby they're actually going for the spectacle rather than the actual content. Like Unreal had about, I think it was Unreal Tournament had about 8 different gameplay modes that you could play in.
Yeah.
And yet nowadays it's like you've got one gameplay mode, but you can play that mode and let's say you're a little bit quicker, you're a little bit slower, you're a little bit more tankier, and that's it kind of thing.
The great thing about Unreal Tournament is that, or the engine really, is that it's designed for modders. So if you wanted to make your own level and make your own mode, you can do it very easily. There's, what were they called? Replicators. They were basically just miniature mods you tie into a level, or you could add on to a level or turn on and off on a level.
Oh, you mutators.
Mutators, thank you.
Yes.
Totally forgot the name. I was thinking of Stargate again. I was like, what the hell? Yeah, so that big head, big gun, faster. Like you would modify I could really show you because that's where I did a lot of my modding was in Unreal 2K3 and 2K4 back in the day. Call of Duty is RPG. Okay, that's awesome.
It's because it's like anything today, anything's got a leveling up system and an upgrade system. It's like it's an RPG. It's like all the Battlefield. Everything's an RPG, then, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the first game that did that, where it was a first-person shooter, was called Day of Defeat, and that was the hardcore of hardcore LAN party games that you would play. It was that one, and if you weren't hardcore enough, you would play Unreal. You would play Quake 3. So those were the two. And they had upgrades. So the more you played with your character, they got better guns, you got faster stats and all that stuff. So I have played 1 or 2 of the Fire Emblem series. I played the one on emulator, and I played the one on GameCube, I think. And I did not like the weapon system. I thought it was a pile of shit. I really hated it. Like you break your spear after 3 attacks or some nonsense. Like, what the hell? Like you find the best spear. Oh, wow, there's an amazing spear, and you use it twice and it's toast. You're like, what? GTA is an RPG. You've got stats and you're currently playing a role. Okay.
That was San Andreas, wasn't it? Where if you ate burgers all the time, you got fat, but if you ate the gym all the time, then
yeah. There's a fat system. Technically, it's a role. Yeah, okay. Do you like any RTS games? I'm a really old school. I like Dune 2. That's like one of the first RTS games ever. Dune 2000. World of Warcraft, Reign of Chaos. I'm a hardcore Reign of Chaos Dota game player. That was before obviously Frozen Throne, and obviously before League of Legends. So I was that for about 4 years, and then League of Legends came out. And that was the big jump. So League of Legends is still the big, to me, I still think League of Legends is an RTS. Just, they didn't bother to make any maps.
Yeah.
And there's only like 3 maps. And no one plays the stupid 3-on-3 map. So I don't know. Just make a goddamn map. It's so hard. It's like one of the first things you learn when you do level design is make a map. And these guys at Riot just keep making more skins. That's how they make their money. Quake is the hardcore. Quake, when we talk about having LAN parties, everyone goes, okay, it's time for a real game. And then everyone says, oh yeah, okay, let's play some Quake. Wasn't the first PlanetSide that used RPG? Oh, PlanetSide. Oh, let's not get into that. That's a whole other discussion. Yeah, let's just avoid that topic.
RPG elements, so I'd probably say Deus Ex or the first Deus Ex, really, because that was first-person shooter that had RPG elements to it, or System Shock.
Yeah, even then, when I played Deus Ex for the first time, I couldn't get into it. It was just like, what am I doing? You're on a dock and you try to infiltrate a base. It's like, I have no gun. Like, what? You want me to hack something? Like, So yeah, I didn't know what to do with that game. It was okay. Everyone's like, you got to play the first. It's like, dude, I just can't get into it. It's like going back to System Shock. Can you really do that? I guess you could. Get an emulator going. Okay, who is Chris Chan? I don't know.
No one that you should really be concerned about.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think gaming has matured? I don't think gaming has matured. I think the cultural, what am I going to say? The cultural milieu, the times have changed. So you see a lot more adult themes in media these days, and that reflects in gaming. Like, again, with God of War, there's full frontal nudity. Just because. There was no reason for it. And if they didn't do it, they didn't really treat it properly in an adult way. So, yeah, it's supposed to do with what other media has done as a result of the times. So if TV and movies do it, games will do it. They'll use the same grammar, they'll use the same mannerisms, they'll use the same words, the same themes. It's really the same thing. So yeah, if you're saying games have matured, then that's because we have. But you'd have to look at a certain exact point of game that does it first, and we can't really point to that. So yeah, it is more of a cultural thing than it is a gaming thing or a political thing or whatever. It's just we've matured as consumers. What do you think of Riot redesigning their champions so they don't have any more physically ugly characters? That's an interesting question. Because when you have an artist who designs artwork, he will make something that looks attractive even though it's ugly. So it's going to look aesthetically pleasing as an ugly thing. So I remember the troll character in Riot who got a redesign. And he was Trundle. Yeah, when we first saw him, he was this disgusting looking skin peeling off his face and body, and he had a disease, but he was constantly regenerating. So it was this Namor thing, a crossover with Marvel and DC, where his body is on fire, but he has to stay in the water, and that sort of thing. So yeah, they realized that not a lot of people were using Trundle. I never used Trundle. I still don't use Trundle. But they made him more Marvel. They made him more superhero-ish. And they did the same with everyone else. Why? Because no one wants an ugly skin. Some of them do. Some of them really want like a disgusting creature. I'm trying to think of one, but I can't think of one anymore. I don't think they've ever removed a character. Everything they've created, they just redone. They just keep redoing it. everything that's old is new again. So yeah, I remember when League of Legends first came out, they had a lore page or a lore page. And I was always reading that. I was like, oh, this is interesting. But then you're like, why am I reading this? What does this have to do with anything? It's cool to read because you learned about the setting. But yeah. So I'm a little sad that they're not doing ugly characters anymore because, well, it's good and bad because one thing you'll literally get the troll characters who will choose to pick the ugly character and just get killed all the time because they're an ugly character. It's like, kill me, you hate me because I'm ugly, or just running into heroes. So, why can't Blitzcrank be an ugly cybernetic? Like this disgusting.
Or like not.
Like in Dota, there was the what were they called? The two-headed ogre that they used as a base for. It's the guy with the grappling hook. I can't remember his name. It's been a while since I played these games. But he was a disgusting character, and he had this ability that he'd spew his guts out, and all the acid would hurt you in an AOE. And those are good examples of great characters or great character designs from World of Warcraft or Blizzard. So I'm sure they're still there because that's pretty much what happened to Dota 2 and the offshoot of Dota 2, the carbon copy. What the hell was that called again? I never played it, so I can't say. But yeah, they pretty much lifted those characters, which were not very attractive. So yeah, it's just selling. It's appealing to the lowest common denominator. Look at all the chicks in Dota. They're all, C cup, whatever, sometimes way more than that. They all have feminine-ish wiles they want to talk to you about. They want to be funny. They want to be sexy. They want to be all this. Some of them aren't. But those are the rare ones that are interesting, like Poppy. Poppy's always a great character. Kick the crap out of you. You're like, what's going on? Can't tell. The best way to make ugly characters is if you make them cool looking. I don't know. There's lots of ways to make a character cool looking. KOTOR 3 died. Yes, it did.
Oh.
Pudge. Thank you, guys. Pudge it was. Pudge. See, back in the day when I was playing on Reign of Chaos, there was another map that was better than Dota, and I'm trying to remember the name. And I can't for the life of me, but that was the hardcore. Like, how I talked about how Day of Defeat was the hardcore first-person shooter game, and then everyone else played Quake 3. This one was the Day of Defeat style game. I can't remember the name, but the heroes were insane. The heroes were just like on crack. Whatever you thought Dota was on the Frozen Throne, this was like 3 times crazier. And that's why I loved it. Yeah, Meat Hook. That's why you got Pudge. Heroes of New Earth. Thank you very much. Never touched it, but I know what you're talking about. What would be done with a Dragon Age Origins 2? Jesus. What would you do with a sequel to Dragon Age Origins?
Apparently, actually, that's one of the things that's coming up in E3 is Dragon Age 4.
Yeah, they
it's probably going to be an announcement like what they're actually working on, which is going to change irrevocably, but at least
I heard the rumors about it. I don't know a thing, so I can't comment on it. But with origin stories, you don't do a second origin story, obviously. You build upon it. The idea behind Dragon Age 2 was a good idea. It wasn't a horrible idea. It's just the execution of that premise was bad. So what they did was they looked at the stats of who played what on Dragon Age. And they say they mostly played human noble. Fine. What happened in Dragon? Okay, well, there's this big exodus of the war, and the nobles have to scatter. Okay, you're an exiled noble. Great idea. How did that work? Kind of, sort of not okay. It wasn't horrible. The execution wasn't disgustingly bad, But because you had to have all these characters with you, you had your brother, you had your sister, you had your mom, then you met your uncle, and then you met people along the way. Then you have all these characters. You have to deal with all their plots. They don't all work out very well. So you have fractured stories. It was just like, I need my family to survive. I need my family to survive. Then you'd be okay. All the other characters would be satellites. They'd be along the way, and you wouldn't focus on all of them. And they did actually try and tell the story of you coming to power as a result of that, which didn't work. So you have survival, then you have your brother or sister dying, then you have your uncle's side quest, and then you have the time skips of you going away from your home to get your fame and fortune. So, the ideas sound fine. It's the execution which didn't work. So I would sit down with the writers of these ideas and hammer them out properly. And then once you hammer those out and everyone's happy, you then go to the game developer and say, okay, what do you have in mind here? How do you think of creating this? And if they start cutting corners, you say, oh, we can't do this because of that, then you have to go back to the drawing board. So you really have to tighten up telling a story about an exodus or about escaping a war and being a refugee and how to make it work. I don't know a thing about WoW and its lore. I don't know what it's become. I mean, the last time I played it was like 15 years ago or so. So I can't really say. Is it? I don't know. Does anyone know? Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
My last stuff was Warcraft 3.
Yeah,
so
that's what I remember. Arthas and the Troll Hunter or the Headhunter Troll. And, oh boy, long time ago. And like Fallout 4, then I'm tempering my expectations. Yeah, Fallout 4 is a mixed bag. I don't really have too much interest in going back to it. I'm really happy with Vegas or New Vegas, so, and all the great mods and DLC that came with it. Even though most of the modders are now on Fallout 4 is the new thing, that's normal. You would only play Fallout 4 for the mods, really. Fortunately, so I think we have exhausted ourselves here.
Yeah, we've gone for almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully I'll get my next Mankind Divided video coming out, and I'm very pleased with the first few hours of Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Looks good, plays well, and hopefully E3 will not be a horrible mess of boring.
Ooh.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments later in the last video or on the channel, which I'm trying to see my tab, which I don't have access to because I'm not in it. Yeah, go ahead and ask some questions. I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great, well, in this case, long weekend here in North America.